good. There we are. We're starting to stream. Okay, so Brendan is going to test the waters. I'm throwing him in into the sea. We're going to see if he sinks or swims. He's just going to shoot the shit, burn bandwidth, until, I'm even of some semblance of oxygenated mindset where I can pretend to be here. So in the interim, let me get to those links. And everyone, I'm counting on all the rest of you listening to tell us how we sound technically, how our technical, sound is. So let's see now. Brendan, take it away. Yes.
Okay, so hello, everybody. Good evening. It's already a new year.
Louder, scream, shout.
Interesting.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, yeah. Is my microphone not working very well?
No, of course not. You remember I told you you've got to have oral sex with the fucking thing. Pretend you're getting.
It's like a really cheap mic that you can buy from. It's just like a headphone
pretend
mic.
It's a clitoris, and you've got to stimulate it with your tongue. Just get in there, okay? And Marcus Grick says, "Morning, mate, from Australia. Good morning."
Oh, very good.
The man.
Yeah, many blessings for the fires there.
Yeah. Yes, we are going to speak a bit about them tonight. Yes, and Bizarre HD says, "Sound very clear."
Come on, let's go.
And loud. Evening, gentlemen.
All right,
wonderful. And Marcus Grick says, "Both sound fine, but goddamn, do you have to stress my speakers sometimes?" Yes, do it. Stress the speakers. Have fun with it.
Oh my God. Yeah, maybe. Sometimes I have to turn down the volume to save the speakers.
Okay. Well, I can't hear you, so start shouting louder. If I can't hear you, I doubt many other people can. So.
Right. No, it's just a new year, and it's pretty good. It's starting off interesting, where the Iraqis stormed the U.S. embassy because they're pissed off.
Did they?
And then
really?
they tried to. Yeah, and then they tried to say it was the Iranian militia.
The Americans tried to say that, or the Iraqis? Who?
The Americans said that it was an Iranian militia.
Oh my God! You mean an Iranian-sponsored Iraqi militia is what the Americans were trying to say? Okay. What I can't understand is why hasn't this happened sooner? This should have.
Yeah, I was gonna say they already destroyed the whole country. There's nothing that could be done now. Exactly. Unfortunately.
Right.
Yeah.
By the way, anyone who's heard a little echo, that's just me testing the sounds. We've got 2 thumbs up, and add my third to that. And of course, Brendan, don't forget to add yours as well. And with that, Brendan,
no worries.
Back to talking about...
I'm gonna park my car, so it'll take me a second. There might be some noise.
Right. What did you say? You're in your car?
Yeah, I have to park my car. I just got home, basically.
Okay. The car is not your home, I hope.
Not yet.
He's working.
Getting closer.
Oh my God. Oh,
no, I'm just joking, but.
No, I know. I get it. Oh my God, I hope not. And there we're gonna hear a little bit more.
Getting closer.
Oh my God.
No, I'm just joking, but.
No,
you can still hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you. Say something again. Yes.
All right. Yeah. No. What was I talking about just now? About
you're talking about your car. You were you were taking it to Iraq. Actually, you were telling us about how you got 2 cars in Valhalla. You got 2 cars in Valhalla because
I'm gonna write the book. Douglas, I'm gonna write the book now.
Yes. So
I have to.
Yes.
But yeah, basically my other car it died, and I was trying to keep it going.
Uh-huh.
And it needs a new alternator, but it costs too much money, more than I have right now.
Tell people about how your dad is such a fucking motorhead that you.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that you basically learned that cars are detrimental to human health. That the repairing of cars is detrimental to human health, and that.
I would just speak of it more broadly, probably, and say that just the whole mechanic field is like that, where it's they don't really care. I mean, some of them do, but most of them don't really care about safety or exposing oneself to carcinogens or any kind of hydrocarbon that does that kind of stuff.
Right. And you're convinced that this impacted your dad's nervous system.
Well, basically everyone who's ever smogged cars, right, for a lifetime, for more than 20 years, something basically happens that's not good.
And you've seen this.
Yeah, from multiple people.
And they tell us how they behave, how they degenerate.
Well, it's sometimes it's behavior, and sometimes it's just straight up they get cancer or something. It's they can't reverse it.
Shit.
Something bad always happens. So working with cars is usually not the healthiest choice, I'd say.
Right. That's just.
But awful. It could be lucrative, or you could make money off of it if you were good.
Right.
Good up with the it takes a certain type of mindset to take something apart and put it back together correctly.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
Like remembering where every piece goes. It's almost like some kind of tick that some people have. I don't know how to explain it.
Well, it's a lot like a person who builds models. It's like model making, or
Right.
yeah, or puzzles, you know, something like that. It's a
Right.
certain kind of mindset. But yeah, please continue, and then segue from that to the Iraq situation. You know, that's. But I think the cars are more important at this point to take us to the top of the hour.
Yeah, I don't want to go there yet, or ever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You
So
don't want to go to Iraq ever. No. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I've been brushing up on my Arabic on a side note though.
Yes.
And so
yeah. Oh yeah. It's not that the Arab world is bad.
So I might be able to travel out there. I don't know how they would feel about it.
Yeah.
I would enjoy to go see like the Baalbek stones in Lebanon. Have you ever heard of that place?
Yes. So
like that's one place I'd like to see.
Yes.
And supposedly, like the mountain range that's right behind it is in the Bible where it says that like the Nephilim landed or the fallen angels basically came down.
Yes.
So I think there's some connection there.
Well, I can see
that. Hold on.
Because...
1 second. I need to mute for just like a moment.
Understood.
Yeah. So I'll return.
Okay. All right. So I'll fill in. I'll burn bandwidth. He's gotten home, and so he has to kind of find himself a quiet spot at home. And in the meantime, what I've got to do is get the hyperlinks up. And we've only got a few minutes in which to do that. This is, of course, as I've always said, the most stressful part of the program. And it's always a royal pain in the ass. There's no describing just how irritating this is. Good news is, at least my timelines are responding to the links and providing the necessary, linkage, so to speak, which there's nights when that doesn't even work. So at least we're blessed to have that, going smoothly, as smooth as that can be. And so other than that, I'm very lucky to have Brendan available. Glad he lost his job for the sake of his health. And that is, of course, one of those. It's just proof that work literally kills you. And, certainly one reason to avoid work at all costs. Now, all right. So aside from that and my maniacal laughter, okay, proud to say the link is up on the Sora Aoi timeline, which is the closest I have to a timeline right now until I finally get the energy together to get a new one established with a friend of mine, which should happen sometime shortly now that, after I come back from the latest activity tonight. And so I'll be leaving in a matter of 2 to 3 hours or so from the top of the hour. All right, and okay. Oh, it worked. Pin it to the top of the page. And I'll do that on my DDD timeline, and we will, but basically Maria Grigorich's DDD timeline, and from there we pin it to the top of the page there too, and before you know it, we are set as we can be. And then, of course, refresh the live dashboard, and actually I don't even need to do that, and instead I should be refreshing the there we are, and turn this off, and okay, I'm gonna lower that, get this going, and with that I can go back to more comfortable screens, working this as I am between two computers, the PC and the laptop. And okay, then I take this screen, lower it down. Oh, what fun it is to be involved with all this crap. And all right, let's see where I can go from here. Go to live, and okay. Brendan says I have to find a quiet location. It'll take a few minutes. Yes, that's understood. I'm holding the fort till then. And I will probably take us to the top of the hour with petty observations. And people will just hear me say just innocuous stuff till then. All right, let's refresh this page. See how things are going. And we're going to get the... all right, so came up 12 watching, it says on one window. And the other window has 13. There we are, Lucky Baker's dozen. Marcus Grick says, quick side question, if I can, please. Is Peter Moon releasing any new book info on Montauk now that Duncan and Preston are deceased? Can you please give me some insight into the above question, please? I wish I could. Sorry, Marcus. I don't know. I did invite him to come on tonight if he's available for a few minutes. Let's go see if he actually saw what I wrote. It's funny, you know, every time I go to Peter Moon's messages, it says like he was like active, like moments gone. And then once I check into it, he's just not there. So, you know, poor guy. He's just busy, you know, and wish I could get him on. In terms of what else I could speak about this. Let's just say that I'm waiting for Brendan to come back. I'm trying to get my mind centered. I did not succeed in getting my mind centered at all today. Honestly, I'm just like recovering and still out to basically try and you know, deal with the fact that I'm going out again tonight. So I'm between planets, so to speak. I'm just not here right now. But you know, I'll do my best. So I'm just glad everyone is as patient with me as they are. I'm hoping they're patient with me. Other than that, there's not much I could say. Just kind of like trying to scrabble some notes together for myself with stuff that's been going on lately. We're heading towards the top of the hour, and Brendan is still looking for a quiet place. You know, isn't that the name of a horror film coming out? You know, I've seen some trailers. Quiet Place or something like that. I think so. See, Lady Shay's out there. It gave me a comment on my nice pipe in the promotional banner, and that of course is my mother's pipe. Of course, the promotional banner is on my Facebook timelines. It's different from what you see as the image that's electronically attached to the live stream. So give me just another moment here to try and okay, where am I now? I'll admit that I'm pretty much just totally spaced out. Okay, I was going to take a look at the live stream again, see if there's any further comments in there. Marcus Grick says, I will definitely hold my breath until he is on again. Love your work. Oh, bless you. He shouldn't be on too long from now. He might even be on tonight if he sees the message I left in and just, you know, gives me a hint to call him. Bizarre HD says, Happy New Year, Douglas. Happy New Year. Team Drac, Team Dragon, Team Dietrich, and certainly Happy New Year to him. We're at the top of the hour. I do need to officially start, so forgive me if I miss anyone else in the timeline from this point forward, but I'm assuming Lena Shea is there. Mwah! I love her dearly. Happiness to her. Now, I'm getting a, he's repeated his message here in the, in our, text box, and right now he's listed as away on Skype, so let me lower that and just take over as best as I can. And I can't take over very well, but I will do my best. So one of the things I can do is, oh, here we have that young lady who says, shh, Brandon, it's good. Yes, okay, yes, that's fine. Oh, I understand, honey. Yeah, I know everyone's here to listen to myself. It's just Brandon is good to bounce off of. And on days when I'm like this, not really here, then he kind of takes over. He gives me some cover. That's what he's there for. But honey, you certainly love you. Gonna be mentioning how much you've helped me again. So let me. She tells me to stop. At any rate, contribute to the struggle at showsdd.com/donate.html, which itself be acronym for Hypertext Markup Language, where we now be accepting contributions via PayPal Holdings Incorporated on showsdd.com. We open this transmission with all due acknowledgement unto mine own personal hero, our dearest English brother in battle, who be Team Drax or Dietrichs or Dragons, ultimate post-episodic producer, and our final productions archivist at showsdd.com, as well as the YouTube Maggot channel property manager. You can subscribe to that channel at youtube.com/c/Maggotaur. Maggotaur being spelled MAGGOTAUR. And that individual is John Henry II McMills Warrington. Friend and follow he via his Facebook timeline at facebook.com/John.War. For were it no for he, nigh all videographic works of the renegade military historian would have been lost. 'Twas he who saved nigh all the Douglas Dietrich videos published on platform provided by YouTube that would have otherwise been erased from all free public accessibility and monopolized for privatized monetization via Patreon by the openly sub-satanic, welfare-supported, white trash, Pueblo, Colorado-based amateur sorceress and skunk whisperer Amber Rose Dio, whose My Stick Warrior channel actively exploited YouTube to promote Edomite Thelema, or will, of Peter Simon Levinda, the author of the Simon Necronomicon, to children for years prior to her exposure, and via his own so-called Dietrichology YouTube channel by the parentally aided and abetted violent alcoholic Euro-trash Canadian multiple sexual assaults offender Pavel Edward Privara, who resided in his federally pensioned parents' Toronto domicile and aliases himself as Paul Edward via his Facebook timeline, whereon he hide his still behind images of myself to friend underage boys' precepts predation. And you can find all evidence thereof at showsdd.com for linkage. And in the meantime, I am here to provide an alert and Achtung, a warning and attention needed from all fans, friends, and followers of myself for a bolo, a be on the lookout per pedo predator, Pavel Edward or Paul Edward Privara. And you can find all the backstory in the episode dated September 8th of yesteryear at this point, 2019, of Critical Omissions entitled Deep Web Pedo Predator Hides Behind the Face, a DDD. This can be found on the DouglasDietrich.com website. And this public figure, the former executive producer of my program, who was caught red-handed attempting to archive my entire Google account after having hacked it via our co-managed Douglas Dietrich channel and whatnot, he be a cyber terrorist with a known criminal record of multiple sexual assaults, confirmed to still be preying on young boys behind my own image, even whilst brazenly self-promoting his self-employment expertise as simply Jab. The JAP, all uppercase, being, of course, acronymous for a software program, Java non-proxy. Now, Pavel Privara, referencing himself as a data engineer for then producing my program, makes little sense beyond hyperbole, and citing OJAP as his employer, or rather his field of employment, as he be presenting himself as self-employed, thereby indirectly but publicly self-asserting his unemployability, makes no sense at all beyond the intended entendre as ethnic slur against myself, Jap otherwise, of course, being acronymous for the software Java non-proxy, which you can find out more about at Fresh Meat, an appropriate enough source, linked via freshmeat.sourceforge.net/projects/anon, as in anonymous, as in preserving anonymity, similar to Tor, also spelled T-O-R in the all uppercase, acronymous for the onion router, as in multi-layered, which itself be likewise exploitable in hiding or encrypting IP or internet protocol addresses by moving through multiple routers, a dark web tool employed throughout the pedopornographic industry precepts pederast predations, JAP being similar thereunto, but JAP itself being relatively new, released in December of 2016, as well as concurrently deployable to hide web browsing. Paul Privara thereby openly promoting himself as a data engineer in the realm of child exploitation and baby rape, advertising unto others his own ability to deep dive into the depths of deepest darkness and assist others in such. His About section in LinkedIn reads, "My objectives remain the same, resolve data problems through abstraction," which all too obviously makes no sense whatsoever, a silly string of terms comprising a non-sequitorial word salad. A data engineer develops, constructs, tests, and maintains architectures, such as databases and large-scale processing systems, which altogether might be occulted, it has obfuscated, as abstracting data problems, but it is not how anyone seriously seeking employment would advertise themselves. Instead, Polyboy, the pedo, presumes any potential contractor to read as to interpret his pithy about statement as, I exploit JAP to resolve data problems. It as transmission of questionable data through abstraction, meaning the cascading and mixing the data streams of multiple users in order to further obfuscate. It as to cull the data to outsiders, which be what JAP does. Both Polyboy, the pervert, and his handler, Agnieszka, or Agnes Maria Środzińska, promote themselves as hackers. It would be self-evidently stupid to advertise oneself as such via LinkedIn by all common sensibilities, but they have been emboldened by the Temple of Set to hide in plain sight. Poly's entire linked entry being utterly senseless by any conventional rationale other than within this context, I mean to say. I'm slurring, of course, because I'm still inebriated and hungover, and enough said on that. Ergo, therefore, Paul, pedo Pravara, be advertising more than meets the eye. Anyone doing a search on LinkedIn for JAP in the all uppercase, specifically in disambiguation from the ethnic slur, which would be spelled with a capital J and a lowercase AAP, would pull, which if you used that instead, would simply pull up anyone's profile who had worked in either a Japanese restaurant or the Empire of Greater Japan itself, will instead, by entering all uppercase letters, come across Polypravara's page, and most likely not anymore. With the nebulous statement of resolve data problems through abstraction, it as via encryption being the key. Anyone who wants help in questionable tasks requiring JAP, the program, now be directed to his page and his page alone. His critical omission of blatant hypocrisy, what speaks volumes in of and for itself, being that he refuses to explain as in his openly published statement, per myself, as to why he still misrepresents himself by hiding behind the photograph of a quote-unquote liar, which you can see on his page, facebook.com/PI342. Instead of his own flaccid face, for reasons that be all too obvious, no one would friend him by his own wretched appearance, despite the fact that he tells underage minors that they have finally found Waldo of the Where's Waldo franchise, and that Waldo was really Harry Potter, his other preferred self-misrepresentation, all along before offering to let them play with his magical wand. And one final warning by way of Pavel, the pedo-predatory pervert from Prague. He has now established a false Twitter Incorporated account by which to misrepresent himself called @DDD_now. At DDD, all in the uppercase, _now, all uppercase letters. The official Twitter account for myself be @DougDDietRich, with the only letters in the uppercase being the D's. Both the identified malefactors, Rose Dio and Paulie Privy, ultimately boasted themselves activated assets of the Temple of Set founder, the Set theistic, it as satanic high priest and primary Wikipedia contributor, United States National Security Agency Deputy Director Dr. Michael Angelo Mikey Aquino, Colonel, United States Army, Special Forces, Psychological Operations. Retired, but instead laterally transferred on retirement because, of course, he could no longer climb through the ranks after my expositions per his crimes within the Presidio military base and all across these United States and into Europe and beyond. This individual simply became a liability to the United States Army and laterally transferred into the invisible industry of the civilian intelligence network, where he ultimately retired at the civilian rank or rank equivalent of general in the military, what in the bureaucracies be referenced as a super grade. And of course, he still works in consultation, and of course still handles many intelligence assets such as Disfo Dick Dolan, or Richard Dolan, of his trademarked secret space program. All of this, of course, involves his ever-swelling cult of the Kings of Edom, his own kingdom as he references it, or certainly did so in my presence, that involved assets such as Amber Rose Dio and Paul Pravara, worshippers of the anti-gods. But now you too can do your part to help in the fight against total annihilation. Spread the word about Douglas Dietrich, that he, the biological son of Adolphus Jacob Hitler, which you can find out more about at the link at my douglasdietrich.com website, at douglasdietrich.com/2019/05/08/ Douglas Dietrich, son of Adolf Hitler, fighting against white supremacist neo-Nazis. While you're there, confer a footnote on mine bio, sire, which be on the homepage of showsdd.com, and find out the meaning of my father's name, which many people don't even understand, and if at all possible, electronically relay thy contributions at showsdd.com/donate.html. People are forever asking Douglas Dietrich what they can do to fight the pedopathophalocracy, such being our present Slavo-Western government by patriarchy of pathological pedophiles. You can all help spread awareness by supporting myself. We have a new contribution page on douglasdietrich.com where you can make a donation online using either thy credit or debit card. Simply go to douglasdietrich.com and click the red Donate button. All sponsors will be granted exclusive electronic access to both my videographic and audio recorded archives through to this year, from the 2011 year in our Lord, the very year mine own late and sated matriarch, the Grand Madame Diana Linsu-Jin Takabayashi Hideko Dietrich, was murdered, assassinated. Immediately aftermath, Sanjuichi Sensemi, the 3/11 terror attack against the Fukushima Daiichi, or Big One cluster of nuclear power plant facilities on site, the 7,000 islands of the Greater Japanese Empire, when 'twas deemed by much Native American cosmological reckoning that the first rays of the dawning of the sixth world broke upon us, and magics could again be worked in conjunction with Mother Earth to redeem the folk upon her. They're not on YouTube anymore, whereon the internationally recognized renegade military historian and Intraglobal Crises Analyst, Douglas Duane Dietrich, long agone established his high-profile visibility platform per rationale of personal security. So visit showsdd.com/donate.html and donate online, where 'tis fast, easy, and secure. Only on contribution will thy membership be processed within 48 through 72 hours, between 2 to 3 days, for full access to all mine archives, meaning all those videos that John Warrington saved, aside those on the Maggot Douglas Dietrich channel, and the YouTube channel named Taboo Bros 2, spelled TABOO space BROS space Roman numeral 2, as managed by mixed martial arts maestro Daniel Arola, whom you can visit at facebook.com/daniel.arola.3 of Damage, or Daniel Arola Martial Arts Group Incorporated, colleague combatives. Yea, so all the Magator-backed Dietrich-hosted vids now be available unto all, accepting contents accessible via the aforementioned TB2 and Maggot YouTube channels, our extensive showsdd.com archives, now including even the old ostensibly professed Revolution Radio archives obtained from the late and unlamented controlled oppositionist Mike Ringley, thanks to private purchase by the well-established alternative acid rock band Deep Space Pilots, whom you could visit at deepspacepilots.bandcamp.com, lead bandsman Ronald P. Stroiney, whom you can friend as Zeb Shepherd on Facebook, he being general practice attorney at law in good standing at the law offices of Ronald P. Stroiney and Associates, serving the Chicagoland area's legal needs since 1980 in federal appellate practice, divorce and family law, real estate, bankruptcy, criminal, and DUI. Visit thedebtfreeway.com, as well as the Soi Desan American Freedom Radio transmissions I myself hosted from May 20th of 2018 that Pavel Edward Pravara smuggled onto YouTube, Precepts ultimately copywriting for himself, as alluded to within entitlement a same-dated episode, Douglas Dietrich on American Freedom Radio, about being introduced to American Freedom Radio. Such episodes being re-recordings with new images taken from correspondent points in mine presently banned Facebook timelines, but reformatted per the date our Grand Magator John Warrington named each file, and along other John Warrington uploaded programs, inclusive videos, are now only to be found on douglasdietrich.com, once upon you click that red donate button. On past transmissions, I have informed our listeners about the option to send us checks or monetary orders to mine own physical mailing address in order to avoid paying the middle person. Now my manageress, Lena Shea, has asked myself to clarify unto our audience that I was referring to PayPal Holdings Merchant Services as said middle person, and not herself, who be an unremunerated volunteeress, as my webmistress, the young Madame Lena Shea, has been e-relaying thank you communique on mine own behalf unto everyone who submits their donations online. My presently transitional website situation is in no way, shape, or form analogous to the Aquino-designated suppression asset Lorian Ann Fenton handling, in which she was assigned to sabotage all my contracts, potential sponsors, and all my communications via the open public, while stealing in any and all incoming fiscal succor intended for myself as her personal profits. So fear goddess and dreadnought, whether you send donations online or through the postal services, it will reach myself. Accepting online donations cost us roughly 3% plus or minus to process, so you can help us save a few extra United States dollars by mailing either checks or money orders, never cash, to the personal residential address of the Mr. Douglas Dietrich, which itself be listed on douglasdietrich.com. The most important thing being that people regularly donate what they can within their means. Foremost among Axis Daddy D's donors, aside his lady and mistress Lena herself, be our most beloved greater British brother in battle, the Team Dietrich, our dragon, He-Man, heavyweight lifter, and professional mixologist, the bartender and keeper of the spirits, as well as the YouTube Bizarre HD channel manager, George Knight. Subscribe to his channel at youtube.com/user/BizarreHD, spelled BIZAREHD. You can friend him personally at facebook.com/George.E.Knight.7. Our own personal hero who has substantially delivered towards my salvation from the streets, and whose self-produced videos entitled How the United States Won World War I and Why We Are Still Legally at War with the Third Reich both be factually substantiated, per mine own expositions. Indeed, the last Dietrich, or son of Dietrichs, or son of a dragons, pronounced Dietrich Gulvier, and Anglo-corrupted as Dracula's expositions via YouTube would not be possible sans generous benefactions from my listeners on a monthly basis. Douglas Dietrich be the only person on the surface of this world with the insider knowledge and experience necessary to lead thy resistance against the Russo-sub-satanic occupation and anti-godly insurgency, bearing no end of emphasis that Judy, or it's Anglo-corrupted as Jedi, literally Master D, or the Master of Enlightenment himself, is not paid to articulate his expositions, and has never once been remunerated for his services rendered unto yourself and all thy holdest dear, at incomparable sacrifices to himself, most tragically all of his loved ones, in his most singular and quite unenviable role as the ultimate public informant at personal risk, still at large. Your taxation cannot support him, as he be denied access to the United States Department of Veterans Affairs benefits and or services due dishonorable discharge. So again, go to douglasdietrich.com and click donate. The very survival of the human species be at stake, and I am not exaggerating. Do not wait. Donate now. It'd be appreciated beyond my ability to express in any language. Subscribe to the Douglas Dietrich YouTube channel at youtube.com/C/Douglas Dietrich. And click that notification bell in order to receive notifications that live streams has started. Our gratitude unto the all who graced Douglas Duane Dietrich support. Most blessed be thyself and all thine own. Now we have some due acknowledgments to George Knight, our master mixologist and keeper of the spirits, the man who professionally bartends for the London set. He has donated 100 United States dollars. God bless he and all his own. And Salman Sheikh, our friend, who, as far as I understand, is still in Pakistan, his native land, has donated 250 United States dollars. And he says, Brother Douglas, I pray you have a wonderful new year, 2020. May Allah bless you always and remove all worries, sorrows from your heart. As Salam Alaikum. Peace be upon you. And, of course, the young lady who provided me that Whole Foods card, which along with my mistress and manageress, Lena Shea's vanilla gift card, both serve as my SNAP or Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program cards, the plastic that's replaced food stamps. I was able to use her card at Whole Foods again, and I still have some money on it. It's the card that will not die. So my love be unto her and my eternal gratitude. Well, with that, we bring someone that I'm grateful for, our man Brendan Zoget online, who's managed to make it back. Can you hear me, young sir?
Yes, hello. I'm here.
Well, thank you for
Sorry
your
about
patience.
sorry
Oh,
about
no
that.
worries, no worries. We understand these things happen. It gave me a chance. I had to conduct the blurb anyway. What I want you to do is, if you can, just kind of take over for a number of minutes. I'm going to indulge. I might break in once in a while by first off checking the chat room, see what's going on in there, and I'll report back to you, of course. When I come back, I'm going to read out some messages, commentary left from our latest transmission by the wonderful young Elizabeth C. and J-Mo Reese. But first, we're going to have our man Brendan kind of give me some breathing space and enable me to just kind of assemble some notes from the world around us. And, he's going to put into perspective as much as he can what's been going on in his world along with our world. If you could tell us a bit about your job. We know you've been fired. What about your search for the new job? And
the big
want to
reveal.
know what's going on with yourself, and they want to know if you're all right.
Well, yes, I'm doing as good as I can. I'm not destitute completely, but
working on it.
Working. Yeah, I'm like getting there. I'm like, I'm feeling that 2020 is it's got a good vibe. Like I'm feeling positive about it. And so like, yeah, I'm thinking, basically I'm looking for a job right now. So I have to be optimistic.
Yeah. And so please go on.
Yeah. Right. And then, the package handling job was just like seasonal, of course. And like basically the day after Christmas, they tell you like, hey, you don't have to come in anymore. Like they lay you off basically.
Yeah. Yeah. And, that's all. It's just awful. It's just all. It's right. Exploitation.
But the whole time you're working, they're like, oh, like it's so much better when it's like not seasonal, and like basically trying to get you to like come on board with it, to like work harder. But then like they know that you're not gonna get kept basically.
Yeah, you know what's so awful about that is the
they do that everywhere, but
it's the insincerity of it. It's the fact that they lead you on. They lead you on with it. They even say that someone like the young, earnest, Brendan, or anyone who acts like him, like committed with just
anyone who actually works, they just take advantage of you basically.
Yeah, but they were like promising you almost managerial position. They're bullshit, and
they always start with that. I've learned over the years, even like being in management, like slightly, like occasionally, not for long basically, but you basically have to lie the whole time. Like being a manager anywhere, like that's your entire life. Like unfortunately, I'm not like, it's true. Just the nature of the job. Like not defending them, but some of them are cool. Some people know that like, hey, I have no choice. I have to do this. But then there's other people that just, they like know they're lying to you and they don't care, like basically.
Yeah. And so go on. Yeah. And tell us, well, I mean, you don't need to go on with that subject. I mean, just take over from now on.
That was enough.
Just yeah. And but what about
so I've just been doing that.
What about now, by the way, I'm not going to cut words here or mince words. I told Brendan that he should basically fuck school or seriously consider fucking school, because honestly,
that's a funny story. You just reminded me of something that happened today about that.
Yeah, tell us about
how you were. Douglas was telling me, why don't you just get a job at the prison?
Yeah,
and just fuck school, fuck everything. Like just get a job at the prison, which it sounds good because like they make a lot of money. Like even starting out, like, as like a salary, like you're making pretty good money at that point.
Oh my god!
It's like a cop. You don't have to go like to basic training or anything. It's like you just go to their academy for like I think it's like 10 weeks or something.
Right. And go on.
Or it's probably even less because of it's like the correctional officers. Like they don't have to. I'm pretty sure they don't have to go to something as extensive, but perhaps they do because they're law enforcement still. But basically, I was thinking about it, but then I was walking over by like Folsom Lake, right, or Lake Natomas. It's like a different lake near Folsom. But basically, I heard the riot sirens, so I was like, I don't know. Like I heard the like sirens in the background, and like that's like a riot happening at the prison.
Yeah, but let's get serious. How many times have any of us ever heard of prison guards dying?
I mean, that's a good point. It happens occasionally, but like I feel like it's not as much as like a cop or something.
Oh God, no. The statistics are practically, for all intents and purposes, they're meaningless. I mean, by that I mean they're so negligible that it's got to be one of the safest jobs in the world.
It's not like on the streets where everyone has a weapon. It's like it's more controlled for sure.
Yeah, I mean, literally, it's like it's got to be one of the safest jobs in the world. But go on,
really?
Yeah. I mean, seriously, that's
no, that makes sense because like people have died at UPS, like I was telling you about. That.
Oh fuck yeah!
Like some part of California, like some kind of truck flipped over on them. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. It probably is safer.
Yeah.
But I'm still thinking about it. I mean, there's other options though, like before that.
Yeah.
And plus, I'm already like in the student loan system, so I have to pay it back. Like, I might as well finish at this point.
Dude, if you became a prison guard, you could pay back your student loan like in a week. I mean, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but not by fucking much.
Well, like theoretically, a year. Right?
Yeah, you'd pay it back in a year.
If you're making that much per year, like you could like save up and try and pay it off or something.
Yeah, seriously. And by the way, Samuel Romero says, Happy New Year, Doug, sounding clear. We have wonderful people in the chat room who are wishing us the best. And so please, by all means, go on with, if you have nothing more to say about the prison riots and whatnot, go on with, what else you were going to speak about in terms of special reference,
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a few things. I did figure out what I was going to tell you earlier. It was had to do with it was just Taiwan like passing that bill to where like China can't interfere. Like it's called the some kind of law where it's like they're not allowed to interfere in the elections coming up in a couple weeks. Mm-hmm. So it's a pretty clear signal to like China that like Taiwan doesn't want anything to do with them. It's called the anti-infiltration law, so it makes it sound really sketch.
Good. I like it. In other words, it makes it sound serious.
Yeah, exactly. Like something's really like not cool. Like they're not doing some good shit.
Mm-hmm. And so at any rate, so you brought that up, and of course, obviously that warms my heart. What else comes to your mind in terms of, you were talking about, of course, the Americans were trying to say that an Iranian-sponsored Iraqi militia had essentially raided. So
that's like I haven't even looked into it because like right when I saw it on New Year's, I was just like, wow, this is really 2020. Like, come on, it was just one of those moments. But basically, like these protesters, quote unquote. I don't know exactly what they were, but they call them protesters. They stormed the grounds of the embassy in Baghdad, and then they started like throwing firebombs on it and lit it on fire. And it basically took them like 6 hours or like a long time to get them out. Like these people like basically stormed the grounds for quite a while. And
so when they stormed the grounds, go on. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So supposedly it's because it was a retaliation for the United States killing 20 people in Iraq and Syria connected with Hezbollah, or a specific like sect of Hezbollah in that area. And so basically they blew up like the Iranian like militia, right? And then so these people were pissed off, or that's what they blamed it on. But that stuff happens all the time. So like, as far as like the United States blowing up like certain groups out there, of course, I mean, we're out there.
So
I can't find the exact details right now. It's not coming up.
We don't need them.
I think that you get the point. It's like they blamed it on Iran, basically.
And that, of course, shows the agenda. The agenda is war with...
But it's like anyone, even the people that run the stuff here, like in the... in the Pentagon, like they say that what happened to like Iraq was pretty bad. Like they lost like entire billions of dollars. Like they just like disappeared overnight. Like, like so much corruption happened there.
Oh yeah.
That like obviously the people had to protest at some point. It's like,
well, they would be fools.
What's left of them? I mean,
they would be fools to do otherwise. I mean, to not protest. I mean, it's like I said, I can't understand why this hasn't happened before.
Exactly.
So, but beyond that tragedy, what else is going on in the world that captures your attention?
There's like some, astronomical stuff going on too, and like various atmospheric things, but that's pretty boring. Like to talk about, like you have to see it basically too.
You're talking about some science geek news? Or?
Yeah, it's just science stuff, but I'll admit. But also, just this is what I was going to tell you, actually. So now y'all all come back to me.
Good.
Just briefly, because you already covered it last night, I think, or the other time. Netanyahu finally, now that he's back in, he's seeking immunity from corruption charges. Right. Which is exactly what you said he was going to do.
Thank you. Well, you might remember that it must have been, it feels like years ago, but it was like last year. At this point, it's last year, but literally early last year, I told everyone to, in England, I was telling anyone who was a member of the Liberal Party, anybody who was a member of the left, the Labour Party, to overthrow that idiot, Jerome Corbyn. And I was comparing him, of course, to Bernie Sanders, and I was telling everybody that the
Labour Party guy.
Yes,
Corbyn. Yeah, okay.
I said this guy needs to be overthrown. This guy is not, this guy has done everything he's done. It's not going to go any further in his life. He's at the end of his career. He's going to take everybody down with him if they didn't overthrow him, and they didn't overthrow him, and he took everybody down with him. It was just awful. So I do make these predictions that consistently come true, that are constantly realized. So yes, it's so frustrating to be right. It's so frustrating to be constantly right. So go on. Yes, take over from here.
Like basically, yeah, like he was just able to get out of that, which is pretty classic. Let's
well, he's still refusing to resign.
Yeah. He's gonna basically make himself immune by whatever power he has, and just say like, "Too bad."
Right. Oh, okay. So I was still on Corbyn, but you're talking about Netanyahu now.
Oh, and oh my God, yeah. I don't even know with him where to even start. It's like.
So So Netanyahu.
The Labour Party's wild.
Right. So Netanyahu has just cemented his total victory over his right-wing radicalized Likud, and so it's become essentially a Zionist reactionary party that has taken it to an extreme it's never had before, as extreme as it may have been viewed before by the Arab peoples and the rest of the world.
I think the rest of the world now is like, oh, okay, like obviously he's not getting voted in, like, democratically at this point, or any kind of system.
Well, it was his own party's. It was his own party's vote. Basically, he was cementing his rulership over his own party. He still has the March vote coming up, and we'll see what happens then. This is the March vote in which they vote whether or not he stays prime minister or he's forced to set up a coalition government. And so, as I said, either way, this may very well lead to Israeli civil war for reasons that I expressed, and I'll go into them more in the future, but not in this transmission, but it's certainly one of the things I brought up is that the people on the left, the secular people, are all serving in the military. They're fighting and dying in Israel's wars, and the people on the right refuse to serve in the military because they get religious exemption, and these motherfuckers call all the people serving in the military traitors. Because they're not, extremists who want to kill all Arabs. So the end result is, where can you go with this? There's nowhere you can go with this. So,
it's interesting because some people, even here, like they'll support Israel, but then there's some groups that say like, okay, that's messed up. Like, it's very interesting how that's,
Yes.
I think you were talking about like the line between like, religion and like ethnicity, and how like, how does that work with them? It's very different.
Yes.
In the Judaic world than like even in the Christian world.
Yes, very much so. So anyhow, and our friend JMO actually makes a great observation on that. I'll be reading that when you've kind of wound down at some point. So in the meantime, though, keep going.
There was a couple historical things, if you don't mind, about Israel that I had a question about. It was just like, I heard that they bombed a U.S. ship in their harbor or something, like near Israel in the Mediterranean, and they were basically allowed to get away with it. Is that true?
Yes.
Or is that something that is like urban legend?
No. That's this is the fucking tragedy of our world.
I know it sounds like a crazy question, but
tragedy of our world, that this young man who is conscious and aware of the world around him asks me if this is an urban legend, because this is how scrubbed this has been from the internet. This is how
exactly right.
Yes,
like I've heard of it. People have told me that we're alive at that time, so obviously it happened. But I'm just saying that almost in jest because like literally you can't find any information on it yet.
Yes. This is the USS Liberty incident, and I wrote an entire column on it that one gentleman responded to saying, this is the first time anyone ever wrote anything on it that helped me to understand.
And like sailors died too, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Yes, it was catastrophic. It was one of the largest fatalities just mass fatality incidents of the United States Navy after World War II. Aside from, of course, those that my father had the misfortune to survive, that occurred at the end of his service term in Vietnam, offshore Vietnam, of course, on American carriers, the USS Forrestal being one of them. And again, something I'll go into in the near future. But yes, what you're referring to is the USS Liberty incident. Okay. And now that you have the name of the ship, you might be able to find out some more about it. But the problem is that during World War II, they used all these ships called Liberty ships. So that fuzzes up the search. So this is it's almost as if they attacked that ship for that reason, so that when people would look it up, they would find all this bullshit and propaganda about World War II, about our great Liberty ships. If it weren't for them, we'd be eating sauerkraut with chopsticks, all that bullshit that you always hear. So, definitely make certain that you look up USS Liberty incident, attack by Israel.
Okay, yeah, it's like you could find stuff on it, but one of the headlines is 50 years later, NSA keeps details secret.
Yes.
So, like, obviously it's been suppressed. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, they're not even trying to hide the fact that they're suppressing it.
At this point, they're just like, it's like,
we're hiding it, so what?
Israel was able to attack the United States and get away with it, basically.
Yes, that is correct. That is correct. As a matter of fact, they did that. That the reason that
now, Douglas, is that because that they're like a state and not officially part of like the country system that they can do that? Like, is it some kind of loophole like that?
No.
Or is it just out of sheer politics?
It's just sheer politics. It's basically at that time the Jewish American lobby was much more in lockstep with Israel than it is today. Things have really changed. There are the vast majority of Jewish Americans do not support Israel in the sense that they used to. They may not want to see Israel destroyed, but they no longer consider Israel to be like, their real home or something of that, which is what many Jews had that attitude for generations. And it was at the point where if you read a book that I always recommend, and there was one man who told me that, this book changed his life. It finally made the Middle East make sense to him. There was a book entitled Warriors at the Suez. So if you read Warriors at the Suez, you get to see General Eisenhower in that book. The journalist at that time pulled no punches, and General Eisenhower made the statement at that time of the Suez crisis when Gamal Abdel Nasser nationalized the Suez Canal, and it was the end of the Allied United Front. Basically, at that point, the Allies really faced each other as enemies. The United States at that point, people don't realize this, was ready to go to war with England and France. And at that point, the United States had its fleet in the Mediterranean. The British and the French had their fleets in the Mediterranean, and they were facing each other down. And during that period of time, Eisenhower was forced to come out because this was a situation that was critical. It made the Cuban Missile Crisis look like nothing. And he came out and he said, all you Jews in America better start thinking of yourself as fucking Americans instead of as Jews. I mean, can you imagine a president saying that today? That's it'd just be unthinkable. And but for years that is how they thought. That is, it's nowhere near that now. And so when at the time of the USS Liberty incident, yes, the Jewish lobby had basically revised the entire reality so that anyone who spoke up about the attack on the USS Liberty was instantly classified as a Judeophobe, what they call an anti-Semite, and therefore you couldn't get anywhere with speaking about it. You were just instantly attacked. And with that in mind, it was just one of those wretched situations that, it's changed now. And so you should be able to find some information on it so long as you look up USS Liberty Israeli attack. And right. With that in mind, definitely, it happened. You'll find out more about it. Moving on from there, what else was on your mind?
I mean, not to switch gears too much, but as it's still in World War II, if you don't mind, like I heard basically that, and I don't know if this is true, I just heard this, when Patton, or was it Patton, or one of the generals, when they had to face off against the Red Army going into Berlin, the Americans, like the high command, told them to stop and let the Russians come in, and I think it was Patton. He was so pissed off that like he was going to cause a scene when he got back, and they basically assassinated him. Is that like what happened?
Yes.
Like the Russians came in and they were like, you have to let the Russians come in, and he was like, no, fuck you guys, like it's bullshit. And then they basically took him out.
It's like that, but it's, of course, all of these, there's a problem of,
I mean, it's very simplified.
Thank you. Yeah, there's a problem of oversimplification, but okay. Basically what happened was, first we have to remember that the Americans.
So why did they allow the Russians in like that?
Well, the Americans.
It destroyed Berlin for years.
Yeah. Well, the Americans didn't have a choice. Remember that the Americans were nowhere near Berlin. I mean, that the Americans were desperate enough to try. Here's the whole problem with that whole situation in World War II. The Americans under Roosevelt, here's where the frustration was starting to build up, was that when it came to the war on the surface world, and this brings up something that cannot be overemphasized, and like a lot of people just have no understanding of this, no comprehension, but every time they do research into this, they can verify everything I say. What people don't recognize is that Adolf Hitler had the largest army in the history of the fucking world. And nobody even acknowledges this, but if you look it up, did Adolf Hitler have the largest army in all the history of humanity? You will find out, yes, in all recorded history, the largest army in the world was mobilized by Adolf Hitler. All the way up until the fall of Berlin, people were coming from all over the world. This includes Irish. This includes Americans. Americans, mind you, who sacrificed their citizenship. This includes Arabs. Yes. This includes Asian Indians. This includes from all over the world. This includes Cambodians. They came to Berlin to fight the Soviets and defend Adolf Hitler so that he could make his escape. Is the amount of troops that mobilized to fight in the army of Adolf Hitler was so enormous, and all of them at the end of that conflict became instantly prisoners of war, like all Germans became on their own soil, at the time that there was simply no place left to go. But not every space on the map was taken up. If you actually look at the day of quote-unquote surrender, day of quote-unquote capitulation in Europe, you're going to find all these spaces on the map that are not occupied by the Americans or the Russians. There's all
I was going to say, it looks like a bunch of blobs coming together.
And these blobs on the map is where, of course, these units usually made their escape from. And people just don't understand how they got there, how they made their escape. None of this is recorded in Allied records. Yet if you look it up, and you look up the French who fought in Berlin with the Charlemagne division, I mean, like, fucking division. We're talking about thousands of men.
Yeah, exactly.
When you talk about the Arab Legion, when you read up on these things, you find out there was the George Washington units of the Americans. There were these British units, the British Freikorps. There were all these various units that if you look up the Irish who fought in the Battle of Berlin, the British, the Americans, you'll find out evidence they were there. Then you ask yourself, how did they get out? And yet all this transportation of them in area, and then they left, and yet there's no evidence of this in terms of Americans or Soviets speaking of it. So it's this incredible situation that is just entirely hidden from history. So
in that Donitz interview, he was saying he used like merchant ships.
Yes.
Was that like a different situation, or is that the same kind of deal?
It's the same kind of situation. Well, this was Adolf Hitler's pirate fleet. And so what you had was many of these merchant ships that were actually turned into combat units that would be able to defend themselves, unlike the Americans and the British, who basically had merchant ships that were escorted. The merchants had minimal defense, so they were escorted by all of these warships. The German merchant ships were armed to the teeth, and beyond that, they would actually disguise as ships under foreign flags so they could approach Allied ships and then open fire on them.
Yeah.
So it was this pirate fleet that helped evacuate so many of these foreigners. And so they came in under these mysterious circumstances. Many of them escaped under mysterious circumstances. Others were taken prisoner by the thousands and thousands by the Soviets. And then others wound up in the west of Europe, where they gradually just migrated out or even stayed and became European citizens. But in terms of all of these many foreigners that came in to fight for Adolf Hitler, the end result was they wiped out the Soviet war machine. They killed 1 million Soviets in the city of Berlin alone. At that point, Stalin's entire war machine was dead. It was cut to the bone. There was all of this crap about these mighty legions, all this crap about, it's just like at Dunkirk, where the whole myth, where they still made that film about Dunkirk, all that Adolf Hitler did was he halted the advance and told the Germans forces to leave the British alone and let them evacuate. That's what he did, because he was hoping that that would give the British a gesture of goodwill, that they would then negotiate for peace, because he allowed their expeditionary forces to escape. I hope he regretted that till the day he fucking died.
Right. Why? I wonder why he had a fondness for Britain. Was it because his brother was British, or like, do you think it was
his
just
brother had lived in England and he had visited England, and of course, which they
or like
also
the imperial complex, where like people look up to the British because they're very regal, I guess.
No, he just basically had visited Britain, and when he was in Britain, the people had been extraordinarily nice to him, and he had just felt an affinity for the British people. So this was his goodwill gesture, and of course, it was totally propagandized into, oh, they escaped. As it, how can you escape when the Germans just let you go? The Germans did everything but provide boats, and the British had to provide their own. And because they had to scramble and get a bunch of boats to evacuate everyone, it's not like the Germans did anything to stop them. And and then they make a movie about how heroic this is. This is when you realize history on the Allied side is nothing but a lie. There's nothing but a lie to everything these people say. When it comes,
and even alien is like a lie, right? It's like
there you go.
The word a lie put into a word.
Yes, and
so, anyways.
So in terms of the whole thing, when it came to what was going on, was at that point in history when Patton was along with many Westerners, this happened throughout the war. As they were advancing, they kept getting stopped. And so it was Eisenhower who was on the ground, who was basically, following upper orders from Roosevelt to just halt and halt. And then finally, when it got to the point where they, were nowhere near Berlin, there was nothing that could be done. So the Soviets had sacrificed the remaining amount of active manpower they had in the Battle of Berlin. This is why in the Battle of Manchuria, when the Soviets, of course, were fighting the 1 million-man army of Guangdong, which was all Manchurians and Chinese and Koreans. The Japanese had left very few forces. They had left a skeleton force and had taken all the Japanese into Japan and or deployed them in China itself. At that point in time, when the Soviets moved in, everybody they were using in that part of Russia to attack into Manchuria, these were all World War I veterans. Not only were they
a while back you said to look at the video on YouTube, and like they're old dudes with beards on horses and sabers.
Yes, they're all fighting World War I tactics. They're using cavalry. They're deployed on cavalry.
Versus like mechanized warfare. I don't know about that.
Yes. Well, it's not that cavalry is ineffective, but it obviously was effective only in the sense that all of the heavy armor had been pulled out of Manchuria, so they were left with tankettes, and the cavalry can prove effective if amassing against the tankettes.
Interesting. Wow.
So it's not that was ineffective. It was simply the fact that notice their age and so they mobilized all the senior citizens. All the senior citizens were mobilized and deployed in that because there was no active duty young men left. They were all deployed in Europe, and those that hadn't been killed were needed to hold Europe. So basically, all of Russia was just devastated. There was nothing left, and America was trying to propagandize it, as were all the Allies, as this massive threat, this massive, it was a joke. But the point was they had, at that point, taken Berlin. The Allies were nowhere near it, and it was at the point where those parts that they had overrun that had U.S. troops in it, Eisenhower let the American troops be taken into Siberia, where they were never recovered. And so tens of thousands of Americans died in Russia at that point. They were taken over to Russia and treated as enemies, treated as prisoners of war. You might say the Allied front fell apart at that point, and in a sense it did, but the Allies of the West among themselves fell apart at the nationalization of the Suez Canal. And but during that period of time that Eisenhower was encountering all of these men, all of these foreigners, all of these Cambodians and British people and Irish people and Americans in German uniform. At that point, Eisenhower said, the whole world has come to fight the Soviets. Let's use all of Adolf Hitler's largest army in the world. Let's deploy that now while we have a chance to mobilize these men.
Wow.
Let's deploy them against the Soviet Union and take the Soviet Union out now. Based
that
on
would have
everything
worked because they ran out of men, correct? Right? Like Stalin basically exhausted all of his men at that point or something.
Yes, that's what he told. Yeah, he told Zhukov this. He said, when it comes to, the Americans have all this bullshit where they say, they brought all these units out of Siberia and everything, and they did. And by the time they made it to Berlin, the armies that were attacking Berlin were all they had. Zhukov was told by Stalin, there are no more reinforcements. There is nothing after this. This is it. And they lost pretty much the mass bulk of their Soviet army at that point in Berlin. I mean, if they hadn't, Stalin himself had said to Churchill and Roosevelt, he said, I want Paris. He said, because the Russians had taken Paris in the Napoleonic Wars, what I call World War Zero. Stalin himself had said, I want Paris. If he hadn't lost all those men at Berlin, he was going to advance into Paris because he felt that was Russia's destiny to repeat the Napoleonic conflict and take Paris. And so, by the way, people can look this up. Don't take my word for it. You could look up the fact that Stalin said this. We had it Paris before. I want Paris again. And we just didn't have the manpower to advance. So everyone knew they were going to advance as far as they could. And when they were no longer able to advance, then Patton said, well, let's mobilize all these men and let's retake all Europe and liberate Moscow. We can go we could do all this because they got nothing left for all the reasons I just articulate. And when Patton said that, then they assassinated him.
Okay, that makes sense. He was saying, F the Russians, let's just do it now.
Yes.
And they were like, no, sorry.
Yes. Well, they didn't even say that. They just killed him.
Do you think that they were planning on doing the Cold War scenario for what you said, like just to get infinite budget? Like, we need, this much money to counter the Russians now. Or was it just something that evolved later?
It was just, let's say it was half organic. It was half, it's like I said before, when it came to the whole thing with Kennedy, take a look at what a victim Kennedy was. Here's this individual, John F. Kennedy. He becomes president of the United States. And, it forces me to go back and I need you to dominate the conversation for a bit because I need a break. But, honestly, in terms of just to finish this thought, when it came to the, shall we say, God, I'm trying to think back to Kennedy and what built up towards that. Let's take a look at Roswell.
The missile crisis and whatnot.
When I speak about Roswell, here you had Roswell was an incident of all of these Asian prisoners of war basically killing themselves. And when they self-immolated, the Americans made a big deal out of, it's aliens and all this shit. Because at that point, they could project this extraterrestrial threat. And that was needed because the United States was looking to start a new branch of service, which did not exist, called the U.S. Air Force.
Right.
And the U.S. Air Force was brought into being by propagandizing and exploiting the Roswell incident. And a lot of people don't even understand this. A lot of people don't even know this. Wow. The United States Air Force did not exist until 1947. You had the United States Army Air Corps. And it was...
And it's interesting that Roswell ended up becoming part of the Air Force, right? Like, the airfield was Army originally, right?
Yes, that's correct. That's
and
correct.
Area 51 or something like that.
That's correct. That these were all Army bases. So they became, quote-unquote, Air Force bases. They were integrated into this new service. And I
knew people in the Air Force, and they told me that it's just like, you don't do anything, really. It's like, it's basically, they're all on the ground. Like, they don't even fly planes, really.
Oh, God. Yeah, don't even get me started.
They're just, he said they're all mechanics. That's what he told me.
Yeah, don't even get me started. I've talked about that at length before.
They'll even tell you they're the tallest people in all of the armed forces because they don't have to fly planes or do anything.
It's absolutely true. By the way, just so people understand this.
Sorry.
Yeah, a lot of people.
We're cutting you off.
Yeah, a lot of people just don't get this. That there is a height requirement for planes where they want you to be short. People don't get this. They don't want tall people to fly fucking planes. They want short people to fly planes. And so if you're too tall, you cannot fly a plane. And so that's the one thing that was realistic about Top Gun was they got this short little prick named Tom Cruise.
I was gonna say it, but I was like, is it a too low blow?
No. I mean, as bad as it is, it's not
I'm just joking.
That low a blow.
That's why they got Tom Cruise.
Yeah, that's the one reason why they went with that. There was one touch of realism there in that he was fucking short. So there are quote unquote tall pilots, but they're not tall in the normal sense. They're like tall only in the sense that they're 6 feet. That would be if that. So your average pilot does not make it to 6 feet. It's not preferred. And but the Air Force has very, very few pilots. And there are far more planes, active planes, in the United States Navy than there are in the U.S. Air Force. And then what happened was they all went underground and they all started working the missile system. And they sit in the most comfortable chairs designed for man, literally miles underground. Quote unquote, working the missile defense. And so exactly as Brendan has said, that there's no, functionally, there's no fucking pilots in the Air Force. What they're in charge of is, of course, the bombers. And the bombers, of course, haven't been used in forever, not since Vietnam. And when it comes to the bombers, they developed the stealth bombers. And those things are already obsolete.
And that makes sense. You can be as tall as you need to be in a bomber. They're like bigger planes.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, but they don't even use them. The bombers. Like the stealth bombers, there are 20 of those fucking planes. And that was supposed to cover the entire world because theoretically they could, quote unquote, maybe end wars with, the strategic placement of a few very powerful bombs that would trigger tsunamis. Or the like. Literally, this was what they were thinking, was that just a few catastrophic bombs that would trigger tsunamis might end the next war, or earthquake-causing bombs, literally crust busters, as they call them. But other than that, there's nothing you could use the Air Force for. And then they switched to the drones, but those are all Army, and those are all like... So the Air Force is basically a traveling golf club. And anybody who doesn't believe this, you can verify what I'm saying. Don't take my word for it. You can verify this yourself if you do your research. Every single United States Air Force base, and this includes what they call lily pads, which means just helicopter landing pads. Yeah, every single Air Force base in the world is required by design requirement as part of its defense structure. It has to have a golf course. If it doesn't have a golf course, it will not be accepted. It's just an unacceptable design. It will not be commissioned as an Air Force base. And so this is what it exists for, is simply an officers' golf club. During World War II, all of these guys got together. They said, okay, let's make ourselves our own golf course club. Let's make ourselves, it's all going to be, we're going to call it air defense. It'll all be bullshit. So, and to show you how treasonous all of these motherfuckers were, they basically got together in front of President Kennedy, their executive commander-in-chief, and they fed him a series of absolute lies. And by the way, this is the Strategic Air Command. The Strategic Air Command, SAC, SAC. And so these motherfuckers got together and they said, let's tell President Kennedy a series of absolute lies about the Russians have all these missiles, and then he'll give us all this money to build a missile defense system. And we'll tell him there's a missile gap. And by the way, there's a term for this. It's called treason. This is high treason when you lie to your commander-in-chief in time of war.
Right.
And this was war. They were still legally at war with the 1,000-year Reich in exile. And they were in Cold War with Russia. And they went before President Kennedy and they took all of these photographs taken by satellite. And we did have satellites and high-level stratospheric reconnaissance, the U-2 planes. And they took all these photographs from them. They showed them all these structures, which were just literally Russian church spires, Russian war memorials, giant statues and shit, Russian church steeples. Aside from that, the schoolhouses. I mean, just all of these grain silos. And they said every single one of these, thousands and thousands of structures, which were just normal architectural structures, they said these are all missiles. And they told John F. Kennedy, oh, the Russians have tens of thousands of missiles. And so they said, because of that, we have no missiles in comparison, and therefore we have a missile gap. Now, at the time, they knew, and you can confirm this yourself, you could do your research, you can find out that at the time that John F. Kennedy was president, the Russians had 5, count them, fucking 5 missiles. You could count them on your fucking fingers. That's all they had was 5 fucking missiles. 5! That was it.
Holy shit.
That's all they had. And so the SAC, Strategic Air Command, said they had, these are the people responsible for your national security. They said, oh, they had thousands. And they lied to their executive commander-in-chief. And he started this educational reform where he said, we want all of our students to become engineers, not so they could take us to the moon, but so they could build fucking missiles. The entire business of science and the entire science of business were both forever perverted at that point where your economy was destroyed. You became a Soviet economy at that point. See, the Soviets don't have a military-industrial complex. They were a military-industrial complex. That's all they were. That was their entire economy, was nothing but the military-industrial complex. At that point, America became a Soviet economy. It became its enemy. And so at that point, all engineers existed only for one thing: defense contracts. You didn't have any engineers do anything else. All your physicists did nothing but design missiles. If you take a look at Michio Kaku, all he did was design missiles. If you take a look at the guy Freeman Dyson, the man who conceptualized the Dyson sphere. You've seen that in Star Trek where, oh, look, a Dyson sphere.
Oh, yeah,
a structure that surrounds an entire sun, that contains the sun so that none of the sun's energy escapes. All of the sun's energy is exploited. Okay, the man who conceptualized
the Type Zero civilization or whatever that junk is.
Yes. Well, it's beyond Type Zero. At that point, you're at Type 4 or some shit.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. We're the Type Zero because we're
Type
shit.
Zero. Yes, still.
Yeah, that's right.
So anyhow, that man who conceptualized that system, that man did nothing but build missiles. That's nothing you find any physicist other than a teacher, unless you're just a teacher who's teaching physics. If you find any physicist who's gotten a job as a physicist and you ask them, what did you do? Build missiles. That's all any of them fucking did. Right. And none of them, whoever did anything with time travel, none of them ever did anything with interstellar travel. None of them ever did anything that would benefit humanity. None of them ever brought...
Tesla did more in like the time he was alive than any of these last 50, 60 years.
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, this is beyond disgusting.
As far as practical application and not just theory.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. And not just beyond just theory, but also just just defense contract bullshit.
Right.
And so all of these guys, this is what they did for you. They destroyed your world. And so this SAC, the Strategic Air Command, if it hadn't been for them, we would never have had this. There would have been no Cold War. There would have been no missile gap race. There would have been none of this. All of the pain you've suffered is because of these fuckers. These people need to die. They need to be shot. Anybody who's guilty of treason is executed. These people need to be taken out and shot publicly. So what I'm exposing, of course they hate me. Of course they deny my service. Of course they do anything they can to character assassinate me because I'm able to expose them for what they are. They're traitors. And so all of this, yes, when it comes to the entire effect of what happened with the Cold War, it evolved semi-organically. You had these horrible people who were in charge of bombardment, which of course utterly failed in its strategic purpose. And again, you can verify this. If anyone does their own research, they can verify there was what was called a strategic bombing survey. And the strategic bombing studies of the United States Army Air Forces, all of these studies proved, if you look them up and look at their conclusions, they'll draw various conclusions like the atomic bombs made absolutely no difference towards anything in the war. And they'll say, the entire strategic bombing campaign, if you see when I take down Richard Dolan, when Richard Dolan's up there saying, when he attacks myself, you can find this on DDD Facebook timeline. If you look at
I've seen that one.
Started by Maria Grigorich. Yeah, go on the DDD Facebook timeline. You'll see Dietrich destroys Dolan. What Dolan says is, we bombed Japan with impunity. We bombed Japan. First off, that's a lie, of course. But beyond that, the bombing effect, the U.S. military itself said that domestic earthquakes in Japan, natural earthquakes throughout World War II that occurred in Japan, did more damage to Japanese industry than the entire American bombing campaign. The American bombing campaign couldn't even do any damage to Japanese industry that was comparable to their own domestic earthquakes. That's how all the waste of men, and you look at that bombing campaign, all of the invasion of all of those islands in the Pacific was on the basis of supporting that bombing campaign. Because they had to capture these islands to get closer and closer to Japan to launch bombers, and then they had to capture islands so that the bombers could land on it when they were damaged by Japanese anti-aircraft fire. So there was obviously no bombing Japan with impunity. So
otherwise you just turn around and come back, right?
Yeah, they couldn't turn around and come back, without these islands being captured, so that they could land on them and repair, etc., etc. So all of this was done for the bombing campaign. All of the war in the Pacific was for the bombing campaign. And that altogether did less damage to Japanese industry than their own earthquakes. What does that tell you about the entire effort of World War II in the Pacific? It tells you it was a monumental failure. It made Vietnam look like nothing. It was useless. The whole thing was useless. The Americans beyond lost.
Obviously, like the Japanese don't accept, they say the Soviets invaded their islands after World War II officially ended, so like obviously like the Russians didn't think it stopped.
Well actually, here's what happened. How that works down. It's not what the Japanese say. These are modern American scholars. Modern American scholars say that the atomic bombs did not end the war with Japan. You'll actually find modern American scholars have that as a consensus now. They will say the atomic bombs did not end. They'll say the war with Japan ended because of the Soviet invasion. And the Soviet invasion came in after the atomic bombs were dropped. But then they never give you the full story. And it doesn't make any sense, of course, because why would the Soviet invasion in Manchuria end the war with Japan? What's that got to do with Japan?
They hit the topmost island above Hokkaido, and I saw footage of it on the Japanese program, and they were, like you even said before on air, like they're in like these little lifeboat rings, or the life rings.
Yes, thank you.
And they're like paddling across like the Tohoku, whatever they were basically using like inflatable boats, and the Japanese like took them out basically in the water. They even admit that on that program I watched.
Yes, Thank you. What happened was the Japanese had basically think about what happened in Vietnam. During the war in Vietnam, you had North and South Vietnam. And immediately after, the Americans retreated from Vietnam with the fall of Saigon in 1975. What happened? The communist Chinese invaded North Vietnam. They invaded North Vietnam to install their own puppet regime. That was the intent. And they failed miserably. They lost the war. So when the communist Chinese invaded North Vietnam and lost, what was one of the reasons why they lost? How on earth did they lose invading a nation whose capital directly borders communist China? They lost because the Vietnamese maintained all of their armored divisions in the north. The only time that they deployed their armored divisions was in the fall of Saigon in 1975. And they had all of these armored divisions, all of these tanks, all these mechanized legions. They never deployed them throughout the Vietnam War except regularly in very small units. And the Americans had their own tanks, and yet you never hear of tank-to-tank combat in the Vietnam War. Whatever happened to, why was there no tank-to-tank combat? Because the Vietnamese were conserving all their tanks for use against the Chinese. So when the Americans retreated, they finally withdrew their armored legions and sent in all these mechanized units. And this is why the front collapsed so fast. After the Americans retreated, then they deployed all their mechanized units against South Vietnam. The front began to collapse within a very short period of time.
Basically happened overnight or something.
Yeah, and when they rolled in with all these tanks. You suddenly see all of these tanks. And then that's when the communist Chinese said, oh, all their tanks are down south. Let's attack. And then when they attacked, then the Vietnamese kicked their ass because they had basically brought their tanks back immediately. And when they brought their tanks back immediately, then the communist Chinese were completely caught with their pants down, thinking that they were marching into, easy killing fields. And that's how they got blasted back out of Vietnam. Now, the Japanese maintained what were called the Kami-2. People can look this up. Ka-Mi. Kami means God. They maintained their God tanks, tanks of God. These were like their amphibious tanks. Now, throughout World War II, you can see this in stupid films like, what are some Pacific films they made lately? Like Wind Talkers. You can see, if you watch Wind Talkers or any kind of, war film made by Mel Gibson about war in the Pacific, you see tanks. You see Japanese tanks. And you see these are obviously land tanks. They're not amphibious tanks. How come the Japanese in the middle of the Pacific, on all these islands, don't have any amphibious tanks? And that's because all of them were maintained in Japan, in the north, for deployment.
In Hokkaido. That's what they said on that program, yeah.
Thank you. In the event of a Soviet
attack. Emperor Hirohito, he told them to stay in Hokkaido and not to worry about those other frontier islands.
Yes.
He basically let the Russians have it for whatever reason.
No. What he it wasn't so much that. It was the sacrifice of some of these islands up north was necessary for the defense of the strategic Hokkaido island, which of course is an integral part of Japan. But what happened was he had to draw the Soviets in far enough where he could wipe them out, because these are amphibious tanks. They're not boats. They're not ships. So you can't send them out that far. They can only go in kind of like, they can do river crossing. They can cross into the seas to a degree, but then they have to turn around. So without any suicide bonsai charges like you saw on the islands, without any kamikaze attacks, the Japanese wiped out the entire Soviet army that was set to invade Japan. And the only reason that Stalin was attacking was because Truman promised him bomber coverage. So Truman at that point said, we have all of the Alaskan islands back now. We've gotten all of the Alaskan islands recaptured from the Japanese. And people can look this up. The Japanese and the Americans had basically been fighting over the Alaskan islands. This is known as the only combat to have taken place on American territory in World War II. And so there's an entire story about that. And then when the Americans finally retook those islands, then they could bomb Japan from the north. So at that point, Truman said, yes, we can bomb Japan from the north. Please invade. We need your help. And so Stalin committed, and he sent all these troops. And like I said, they're in life rings and shit. Like they're, it's just pathetic. And so these soldiers are in the water like sitting ducks. They're on little boats. They're coming in on amphibious landing ships. And the Japanese send out their amphibious tanks and just blow them out of the water. And so they went as far as they could go. And so some islands were sacrificed in the north, smaller islands, but they maintained, of course, the integrity of Japan and itself. So that, of course, is the entire Manchurian invasion, which was set to act as the capturing of that land so they could provide logistical support to the amphibious invasion of the islands. All of that failed. It failed to invade Japan. So in other words, the Japanese defeated both the Soviet Union and the United States. So both the Soviet Union and the United States at that point were defeated, and the Americans saw that the Japanese had defeated the Soviets. They had no hope of that because the Americans had essentially agreed to ceasefire and couldn't provide the Soviets any bomber coverage. The Soviets were completely defeated, and so then the Americans themselves at that point, everybody.
It's saying on, of course, a terrible source, but Wikipedia said it was given to them in the 1945 Yalta Agreement. Which I don't know if that's true.
If that were true, then Russia and Japan wouldn't still be in a state of war.
There we go.
That's it. This is why you can't count on Wikipedia for anything.
Just because it reminded me of it. One time I saw this thing on NBC News about the main contributor to Wikipedia, and it was like this fat dude who was like on the computer all day. Like, I'm sure he was a chill guy, but whatever. But he claimed to be the guy that edits most of Wikipedia. And then at the very end, they said, his father and his grandfather are like Russian.
Yeah. Well, what does that tell you?
And so to me, that kind of just like was like, oh, okay. Like that makes so much sense.
Yes. Oh my God.
After what you've said before.
Thank you. That's all you fucking need to know. That's all you fucking
If I could find it, I'll send it to you. And it's kind of funny the way he talks about like, oh yeah, I just spend all my time. Obviously paid by someone to do this, but spends all his time like editing them.
Yes.
And like organizing Wikipedia.
Yes. So he's paid by the Russians to do that. So your Wikipedia,
and he's half Russian, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. So your Wikipedia is nothing but a Russian propaganda site, and of course the primary Wikipedia contributor, and I've brought up the evidence for this, is Michael Aquino.
Right. I've seen that screenshot before. Like you can't like forge that. It's obviously from Wikipedia. Like.
Thank you. Yeah. And
it even says salt the article, like literally on it.
Yes. So that Michael Aquino gets protected and shit, and you don't want to hurt his feelings. He can't witness a bunch of people.
But I'll admit that some of the esoteric stuff that's on there is obviously like done by an occultist, or like it's definitely like doctored to be like, the good shit's taken out of it. Yeah, exactly. Especially the religious stuff. I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, it's clear. It's pretty clear.
Thank you. I mean, yeah. So there you have that. Well, give me an opportunity to just kind of like try and get my head together. But
yeah, sorry for going off on a tangent. But
no. It was fine.
Stuff came to my mind that I've been remembering.
Oh, I think it's important.
Now that I get my sleep back, it's all coming back to me.
Yes. But yeah, if you can talk about something for a little bit, give myself a break. Go ahead and do so.
So I was reading. I have a copy of the Bhagavad Gita. Have you ever heard of like the Bhagavad Gita before?
Oh, just so you know, I was given a copy of the Bhagavad Gita as a gift by Michael Cremo, who is a practicing.
Oh, that's really cool. I think you did tell me about that. That's really cool.
Yeah,
Michael Cremo is like, he talks about like the ancient stuff.
Yes, yeah,
which I agree with.
Yes. Michael Cremo is the man who's pointed out that humanity has been here for millions of years, that we've been through cycles of civilization. And so, of course, Brendan will tell you all about that. And
if you're into the Vedic stuff, there is no real history. It's just a cycle. It's a never-ending cycle, basically.
Right, a never-ending story.
Or it's that's kind of a bad way to put it. Basically, it's a cosmic cycle that constantly regenerates. Yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, well, as a positive. Yeah. It should be positive. Yes, it should be a positive.
But I have like the Gita, and I have a version written by Paramahansa Yogananda. Yes. Which I think that this is like a pretty good version. Like he writes it in almost kind of like Shakespearean, but at the same time, like he has everything clarified. Kind of like how you do it with like parentheses and like, you know, like a lot of, what would you call that? Like notes or added.
It's
added
what most people would call unreadable, but yes.
I think I like it. I have that. I don't know if there's such a format, but I like it better.
Right. Thank you.
It's just more detailed, but basically he does that same thing, and there's a lot of footnotes added, and I was reading this footnote here. I can't find it right now, but basically it was from these doctors that were trained at Yale and trained at Harvard, and they said through all their studies that just maintaining a positive attitude actually increases like the immune system.
Incredible.
And so it's not some like new age kind of like meditation cult that's saying this. Like these people have like actually spent the time to do clinical studies and like, you know, maintaining, and that's why I was trying to keep a positive spin on like 2020, you know, because it's like it's proven that the more positive you are, the more optimistic you are, they can measure your body, you know, your blood, and see the immune cells in the blood, and actually your immune system is stronger the more positive attitude you have and the more, you know, generally optimistic you are. But obviously not to say like you live in like some one season world where you're just like always happy, but you know, being more generally more positive is actually healthier for the immune system. And I would say that when people the most essential thing is actually to get like your breathing and like centering right, because your heart ideally should be like closer to like golden ratio, like the way it beats. And so that's when you hear people say like a heart of gold. That's like, it originally comes from like, yeah, you want your heart rate. You inherently, people realize you want your heart rate close to golden ratio, or like it's called not pi but phi, right? Like you want it closer to that ratio, and your immune system goes up like the closer it is to that. So a lot of the machine beats they have playing, you know, like electronic music, and even wearing watches to an extent, like it actually like interferes with your heart rhythm. So that's just what I was going to say. So definitely energetics and like rhythm and stuff like that has as a direct effect on like the physiology. And it's been proven by, excuse me, by these people from Harvard. And I wish I could find their names right now to make it more credible, but
everyone knows.
You get the idea.
Yeah. And everyone knows that.
It's not some new age stuff like, oh, just be positive. Okay, I think I found it. Let's see. Oh, no, this isn't it.
No, remember, you don't need to find the exact source. Everybody believes you.
Okay.
Right. Like, it's far less
just good to have
than what I say, but go on.
Right. Yes. True. And then also, I obviously, it would take a lot of involvement from you, but I tried to watch more of the Immortal, because I'm still recuperating on my time, you know, having to do stuff to catch up for school, but I had some time to watch Immortal. And that's a pretty, I don't know what the word would be, like pretty
deep,
pretty cool film.
Yes.
I think it's a pretty tight film, like, and like the future could actually be like that.
Yes.
But my question was like, why did the gods get like sentenced to death? Is that like, did I skip over that part? Because like at the end they like ran out of time, and I was like, wait, what? Like, what happened?
You're gonna get me talking again. Okay.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, the biggest.
I can just watch
challenge.
it again.
Yeah, the biggest. Well, actually, that doesn't help sometimes.
Okay.
Just watching it, you know. Don't get me wrong. If people watch the film, they will get the satisfaction out of it that they need just that first watch. Most people need to watch it twice just to get some of the details. But
and it wasn't just a wild card. I actually saw a lot of like Vedic overtones to it as well.
Thank you.
Like the baby at the end was like, he looked like a little Krishna baby, like he was like kind of blue.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Like a god, like an avatar, like a god, a manifestation of the gods, basically. Yeah.
Yes.
Anyways.
No, I appreciate that. Yes, and so in terms of the biggest challenge that you had is you had like a graphic novel that took multiple volumes. So when you had a graphic novel that took multiple volumes.
Also, I saw like the video I think you posted or about Enki Bilal in his studio. Maybe I just found it online, but that was like, he's a pretty good artist. Like I could see why he would appreciate his work. He's like very talented. Yeah.
Thank you. And Enki Bilal.
It's not some like, you know, digital work. Like he does that all by hand. That's pretty amazing.
Yes. I'm old school like he was. Yes, we're talking about old school. This is why when I was dealing with somebody like Paulie Privy, the little faggot who was working with me, who was basically trying to attack my heart. Here we have this son of a bitch who has no knowledge whatsoever about actual artwork. Illustration, hand illustration, which he was claiming, that he knew about because he took a course in sumie or Chinese painting, which is totally fucking different and has nothing to do with professional illustration. If anything, it's minimalist and abstracting and has nothing to do with trying to portray anything that's real. It's the total opposite. It's total fucking opposite. It's trying to give people impression by suggestion. So since I myself practiced sumie as a break, it's kind of like meditation from actual illustration of making things look like real. Definitely it's
something like me that I could do, and I can't do art at all, or like any kind of realism. I'm better at abstract and sumie.
And that's fine. That's fine. But
some people, are just better at.
Yeah, and but in terms of when we're talking about the illustrations and the graphic novels, Benki Law, we're actually fortunate that the film came out as coherent as it did, considering everything that we were dealing with, that he was dealing with in particular with the film and all the challenges that he faced about trying to condense everything. Then it's amazing it came out as coherent as it did. But for some people, it takes watching twice. But when it comes to the film itself, one of the things that you'll notice is that the god Horus is sentenced to death by the other gods. That's because he is the Prometheus of the film. That's basically it. So this is why. That's the best way to say it. He's the film. He turned against the gods, did something they did not want, so he could empower man. So he is the most helpful, human-friendly of all the gods, and he is, of course, the one that is the most propagandized against by Games Workshop and their Warhammer 40K cult. So, that's the bullshit that you deal with that we've alluded to before. So most people wonder what the hell I'm talking about with that. but you can give a little summary of that actually for people so they can help understand that.
Summary of like the film or just in...
no, Warhammer 40K.
Oh my god! What I know about it is that it's like, doesn't it have something to do with model building too? Like there's like a big aspect of that.
Yes.
I don't know if I want to go into that. I don't know very much about it, and other than I could confirm what you've said because I knew some dude that read the books and he told me about it, and it sounded like
Tell us about that. How he basically sounded like a cultist. Yeah, so go on.
Basically, that's all he did was read the books and play the different games that came out.
Yeah.
And he said his parents spent thousands of dollars on him.
Yes.
This was some dude I work with. I didn't really know him that well, but he said he spent thousands of dollars on all the different miniatures you can buy, and you can even build some yourself or something. And he spent thousands of dollars on it and was just obsessed with it. Mm-hmm. And I could say his worldview was definitely skewed from that, basically.
Thank you.
As far as metaphysics goes, or I don't know how to explain it really, because I didn't get that
this
many
is cultic
details.
behavior. This is cultic behavior.
Yeah, there you go. Right. He was brainwashed. There you go.
Thank you. And so take it from there as to what you understand about their theology. They basically say Horus is the source of all evil and chaos. They identify him as a chaos god.
Right. Basically, he was the dark god when it's actually, of course, Set, and then you have others too. Yes. That are dark. Yes. I had a question that you might know, but just briefly, Apophis and Set, is that the same deity, or is it an aspect of Apophis is Set, or
well, let's not go into that right now. It's just too obscure for most people. At that point, we're going to start losing people.
That's a good point. No, it's a good point. Okay, but anyways, it's interesting how they do, put a spin on the more positive aspects, just like how they do with ISIS.
Uh-huh.
They create this group and they call it ISIS, but she's actually the goddess of life.
Right.
I think it's along the same lines of what you're saying. They just take it and skew it and make it negative, and that goes back to the physiological
inversion.
stuff.
It's called satanic inversion. Yeah.
Right.
So go
and
on.
I think you've spoke on it before. It's just to create like more despair and like,
Yes.
you know, if everything's dark and gloomy, just like how these, in fact, one of those professors from, you know, the medical field, like that I was referencing earlier, they said, yeah, an atmosphere that's always gloomy will lower like the immune system. So
Yes.
if they like create a system that's like that, where everyone's like that,
Yes.
and just has no hope, basically, like it actually like damages you physically.
Yeah.
You know.
It's true. It's
so, you know, when people think like, oh, it's, you guys are talking about like magic and metaphysics, and that's just a bunch of like, what is it?
Mumbo jumbo or
Mumbo jumbo or something, you know? But it actually, like, these people are using things that do affect like physically people, and like you could see how people aren't healthy. And part of it is the vibrational stuff, I think.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And so
and that's kind of why when you allowed me to like host the transmission a while back, like I talked about how like Anubis isn't as evil as like they make Anubis seem, because they're more like archetypes, you know. An archetype is neither, or I think Jung, he spoke of the archetypes being good and bad, right?
Yeah.
So like there is a dark side to it, but at the same time they're balanced. Like, you know, an archetype is just a like I don't know how to put it really easily. It's like a form of consciousness or a specific mode of consciousness, and like that's what all these like gods actually represent, according to like, you know, Jung.
Carl
That
Gustav
they're
Jung.
yeah, Carl Gustav Jung.
Yes.
And like there was like, you know, they're not evil or good. It's just like a balance. It's a balanced like archetype. Like each one was balanced. So basically messing with those actually messes with like the human psyche, and all these people know this. And that's why so much stuff is discombobulated and inverted, is what House Douglas is saying.
Thank you. Yeah.
It actually affects like the human physically.
Right. And so physiologically. And
that's why all these people have really bad psychology now. I mean,
yes.
You know, even 100 years ago, like America was known as like, you know, people were crazy. It was like the Wild West, but I think that's still like prevalent, you know.
Very much so.
It's like the Wild West, you know, certain parts of it.
Right. Well, I appreciate this. And well, it's 6:30, and what we'll do is we'll go into a few other subjects in a few moments. But definitely, you've taken us to the bottom of the hour. I deeply appreciate that. Give us a little more about, you know, something else you want to bring to attention before I just kind of give us a few final tidbits, and we may kind of like have a bit more of a conversation as well on, you know, what I bring up or whatnot, or kind of point out to people.
I think that was about it. That's not like super boring, because there's stuff I like, I'm interested in, but.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, definitely one of the things I want to remind people about is that here we are, the blurb. One among the creepiest true crime tours in America is the Tucson Murders True Crime Tours. The Tucson Murders True Crime Tours provide us historic crime investigation into forgotten lost crimes in Tucson, Arizona. These small private tours are hosted by the Mr. Ben Baron Astenius, a true crime researcher and enthusiast who will personally take us to real historic crime locations related to these crimes in Tucson, relive these events, and hear these untold stories behind the stories. The Baron Ben, I almost said the Ben Baron, specializes in the seemingly ever-developing case of the late serial rape killer Charles Howard Smitty Schmid Jr., alias the Pied Piper of Tucson, an aftermath tour. Reference the unfinishedman.com website, where you can find excerpts from the book he's written and is now publishing, and of course scenes from some of the documentary films he's been working on. But other cases, such as the strange case of Morris Brady, the Dr. George Marvin Tejardine case, and the Red Rapist, are also within his repertoire, as in fact are all the crimes that shocked the Southwest throughout the 1960s, the very decade I myself entered this vale of tears. These devastating crimes stained a city so deeply they may never be removed. For tour information, contact the TucsonMurders.com. Tucson spelled Tucson, Tucson, and of course put the word "the" in front of it. And that's where you can contact the Baron Ben to personally guide your tour. Or you can telephone him personally at 1-520/323-3406. Once again, that's 1520-323-3406. 6. So with that, I will touch just momentarily upon the white settlement shooting. And honestly, I'm tempted to say there's nothing to say about the white settlement shooting. Honestly, it's this case of another white trash piece of shit. And where did he go? He went to a place to beg for help called White Settlement. He went to a church. We know this much. He asked for help from the church. He asked for food. He asked for money. And then he came back to kill everybody. And now we do know that because it's Texas, and especially because it's a place called White Settlement, everybody had guns. So he went inside the church and he killed 2 people. And it's a wonder he got that fucking far before he was killed by gunfire. By people putting him down, the parishioners killing him, which was, at any rate. So the one thing I do know that I found out from Ben Estenius, and of course Lena Shea, my manager, has also confirmed this, is that the fucker came from Tucson, Arizona. And beyond that, you can look back to the Nevada massacre, where that asshole was in the hotel and he shot up everybody in Las Vegas at the concert right across from his hotel and killed 100 people and injured hundreds more. That son of a bitch was someone who grew up in Tucson, Arizona. So here you have Tucson, which is like just this fountain of white trash shit. That's it. This sewer that which floods over into other states, and it's like Ben Estenius himself would probably suggest, if you want to stop crimes like this, nuke Tucson. Nuke Tucson, and you'd help solve many of the world's problems. So what's interesting is that Peter Moon, who I invited to let me know how things were going in terms of his potential availability for tonight. He was finishing his newsletter. He basically he had published something about myself on Facebook, and somebody responded. This guy from Tucson, Arizona. Well, he was from Arizona. And he mentioned something innocuous about me, nothing offensive, just a casual observation about myself that I had been someplace and witnessed something. And I don't even remember what it was. And I later on noticed he withdrew his statement. He had deleted it, like he'd been embarrassed or something. I didn't want to, have his name somehow affiliated with myself, that somehow he didn't want it noticed he had said anything about myself. It was just very bizarre. So I went to check out his timeline, noticed he was living in Arizona, and he had this meme, this poster, this e-poster, so to speak, that said, "Don't California my Arizona." And I thought, okay, so he doesn't want Arizona to become liberal, quote unquote, or blue like California. And but then I got from Ben Estenius the depth on that, the skinny, so to speak, the details. And Ben Estenius says that what happens is, of course, a lot of Californians sell their homes in California because everything in California is so expensive. They get enough money to buy a house. If they sell their home in California, they can buy a house in Arizona, much larger than they ever had in California, on the cheap, much cheaper prices, and resettle there. So there's all these Californians who are changing Arizona into something new. And basically, Ben Estenius was not effusing. He was complaining about this. And he says, yeah, I go down into Tucson now, and there's all these transvestites. And he was bitching about this to me, and I'm like rolling my eyes, of course, like, well, do you remember who you're talking to? But I guess these are not pulling it off gracefully. Of course, if they were able to do what I do, no one would know they were transvestites. That's how it should be. But these are like men who just get a boob job and then put on a dress, and so they're like over 6 foot tall, and they have these prominent Adam's apples, and they just don't look good. And so I could see why people complain. If anything else, it's an aesthetic eyesore. And here's these dudes, and Ben's complaining about that. Then he starts talking about, oh yeah, I gotta, protect Susan, his lady, his ex-wife, who works at Costco, and it's just commonly known that if you want to steal a car, the best place to go is Costco. And so, he's going there to take her home, make certain she got home in one piece. And, and he mentioned the fact they have no security. And I says, oh, that's interesting. And then he brought up the fact why this was relevant, why this was something he was concerned about, was he was talking about the crime rate was going way up. And he himself, he lives out, and you might remember this. I've spoken of this to Brendan personally. Our friend Ben Estenius, and I've spoken of this on air when he was on with myself. He lives on top of an abandoned mine shaft, a gold mine shaft, and that he actually has a body buried on site near his home. And this is legal. He got this arranged with the government in area, the local governance of a friend of his that nobody had claimed the body of. So he claimed the body as a relation and buried it in his backyard. So this person would have a resting place. And you'd think he'd be alone. I mean, like, there's nothing out there. I've been there. I've been to his home. It's out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. As far as I'm concerned, it's lunar desolation. There's nothing to look at. And yet he's got neighbors. Apparently, the latest mutation of the Manson family has moved in. And these people are cooking up meth. Police have been to that area several times, but he says they don't do anything. And these are his neighbors. And his dog has, gone after them when they come up, in his area. Apparently doped out of their minds on whatever they're cooking up, and that most of these people are losing their teeth because that's part of the side effect of real crack addiction and shit. So, and it was mentioning how in general the crime rates keep going up, and that they've just been escalating because of this crisis in opiates / speed narcotics. That everyone's producing on site of their abandoned mine shafts and shit. And, so I was commiserating and saying, I'm so sorry the Manson family moved in next door. That's a bitch. And but what puzzled me was I couldn't understand this. I says, but just like the guy said, don't California my Arizona. Basically, Arizona is the total opposite of California. Everybody carries guns. It's the most armed place in the world, along with Texas. It can't be any less armed than Texas. They are so liberal with gun permissibility that you can both open carry and concealed carry. You don't even need a fucking permit. You can carry your gun concealed, if you can imagine this, anywhere you want without a permit. It's not a legal issue. I don't understand this. If everyone's carrying guns, how is it the crime rate's going up? Because the myth is that, firearms are supposed to, all the good people, like in Texas, right? The guy comes in, shoots people, then you shoot him. That's why I said I can't understand how he got away with killing 2 people before he was taken down. And then yet everybody's carrying guns, and yet what's going on? And then Ben was only able to say, well, they're not shooting back. I mean, they're not firing back. I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. How is this possible that everybody's carrying a gun, that everyone's carrying concealed guns, and yet the crime rate keeps going up? Again, that would seem to prove to me the equation that the more guns you have, the more crime there is. Sorry.
Yeah, I wonder.
Thank you. Do you have any insights into this, what I'm articulating?
No, but I feel like the crime rate's growing up everywhere because, like, more people are
desperate.
Basically not in a good situation. And, of course, it has to do with the drugs. But, guns don't help, I feel like.
No, the drug, it doesn't have to do with the drugs. The drugs just exacerbate it.
Somehow these people are so desperate. Perhaps they just turn to drugs. Yeah.
Yes. The drugs may exacerbate it, but they're not the cause.
Right.
It's.
But obviously, if everyone's armed,
how is it
more
possible?
More stuff happens, perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only conclusion you can draw, because how is it otherwise possible?
A few years back, there was those people in the Toys R Us in Texas, having a Wild West shoot off literally in the store, a kid's toy store. So, having people like that around, I don't know about if they should have concealed weapons. I don't know.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean,
But like, you know, you never know, really. I guess.
yeah. I mean, honestly, I don't think it really helps. It's like I
Where like
said.
two people get pissed off and it becomes like Yosemite Sam and shit. Like, I don't know.
Yes. This is just most Americans.
Not to make light of it, but it's like really that cheesy sometimes.
Yes.
How is this possible? Like,
Yeah. Most Americans should not be allowed to have guns. Really, I mean, you know, I'm not advocating gun control, mind you, to any extreme extent. It just seems like common sense to me that most Americans, you'd look at them and you'd say, God, why would you give this person a firearm?
right.
You know,
I mean, there are people, like I think you've even said before, like the hunters, you know, there's people that are responsible and like, you know, they know how to use a gun properly, but like the culture's like lost that ability.
Yes, thank you.
That frontiersman, like, okay, I have like my Winchester and that's like the only thing I have to keep me alive. But
right,
they didn't just roll into town, like lighting up the town like they would actually finesse.
Yes.
You know, the old cowboy romantic shit. Where did that go?
Yes, thank you. You
know?
Anyhow, so Elizabeth C. in the comments under our latest YouTube video, the latest episode prior to this transmission tonight, she that, by the way, got some other comments that will take an entire transmission to go through, because they bring up so many divergent issues, and they were deleted, certain attack comments. It is basically what happened was, you know, these fuckers are white, and they put on as their icon a big black face, a big black man, you know, when they attack Douglas Dietrich, you know, and they attack me as a black person, and you know this guy's not black, and it's just, it's how desperate they're getting.
That usually doesn't happen, right? Yeah.
Look, everybody, you can look at anybody
obvious
on YouTube who leaves a comment. There's not a single motherfucker on YouTube, unless you're a known celebrity. There's no reason for anyone to show their face, and so nobody does.
Right.
Nobody shows their own face on comments inside of YouTube. It's just at this point, it's almost like, you know,
it's just the way it works.
Yeah, David Guerre. You know, it's just like requisite. And so yeah, for somebody to put on a big black man's face and then attack myself, you know this guy's full of shit. You know this guy's not black. May not even be a man. But obviously what it is it's a white male supremacist, almost certainly. And it's so, but you know, and what he said was just, you know, simplistic. This is what he said. He said basically, Douglas Dietrich is proof that hard drugs make you crazy. And it's like,
sorry, that's like, I shouldn't laugh.
No, it's funny. It's funny. It's
ridiculous.
Stupid. It's so stupid. And it's like, you know,
like they made you read all the documents and didn't screw our history over.
Yeah. I mean,
it's that laughable.
Well, I mean, it's like, it's the easiest thing to say. I mean, but this is what they're left with.
That's true.
And it's
like straight up ad hominem out of the textbook.
Yeah. And it's just like, so just, you know, if you can't attack anything I say, then the only thing left to say is, those are crazy. That's the only thing left to say. And then, so then of course you hide behind the face of a big black man to say
so
it.
Cheesy.
But it opens the door to all kinds of things that need to be gone into in depth. You know, just so many things. I mean, the reason why they're hiding behind a black face. I mean, it brings us to Trump himself making a blackface joke at Mar-a-Lago the other day. You know, it brings us to so many other things. It's just like, you know, in order to even, since basically white men know now, white men now know that everyone knows they're full of shit. So at this point, because white men know that everyone knows they're full of shit, the only way they can try to make themselves look respectable is to come across as the people they victimize. So they make themselves, they hide behind the icon of a woman, or they hide behind the icon of a black man. And this way, they desperately try to make what they're saying look like, see, the black man says it. I mean, but, you know, in the environment where no one is putting out their real face, it itself becomes a laughable form of attack. It's just, you know, we could go into this for hours, but, you know, that's for another time. However, the positive comments that were left, and this is the problem, is that YouTube, now, Brendan and I are going to deal with this, and we're going to deal with the, what is it that Lena established for myself? Beyond the Twitter account, Lena established for myself a it's some kind of like what are these other links we've got?
The website and
No, it's not just the website now. It's the oh God, she's got some kind of new account now that she wants me to start producing for, and I'll need your help with this. So you and I will discuss this. We will go over this. You'll have to train me on this. So give me just a second here to just kind of try and relocate what the hell she was talking about. Instagram.
Okay. I see.
Okay. So Ron Stroini, the lead bandsman of Deep Space Pilots, is basically he sent a classic DDD video clip. She says was really nice. I don't even remember this consciously. I certainly it's on film, and it was before I was ravaged by antidepressants. It was back when I was becoming a public informant, just outing myself. And it could even be before my mother died, or right around the time she died. At that time, I looked like I was malnourished, which I was. I weighed literally 90 pounds. At that time. I was nothing but skinny. I may as well have been a prisoner of war. And at that period of time, I looked like I was dying of consumption. For all intents and purposes, I might as well have been. So the camera adds on some weight, but basically Ron had found some video of myself discussing nuclear war. So she says, I've got this new message on Instagram, and what she wants me to do is start managing this Instagram account. So she has no time to do this. So I'm going to count on you to teach me how to do it, and we're going to manage this together. But I want everyone to know we've got Instagram now. We have an Instagram account. So look up. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Is it for your like illustrations or like photos, like historical photos?
I don't know, but
because you could post photos and like put information on it.
Well, obviously Ronald Stroini published this video on it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know existed.
Oh, in a video too, yeah. Right.
Yeah. So
that makes sense. Okay, yeah, I'm down to work on that. Like I could.
Yeah, and one thing you could do is see if you can find it even, just look up Douglas Dietrich on Instagram, see what comes up. I just had a very strange message that came up on my screen that was like really long, and I have no idea what it is. But dismissing that for a second. So back to the comments that were on the last YouTube video. Elizabeth C, and shout out to her in the chat room, about one day ago on said, "This channel is my go-to when I want to clear my head from all the bullshit." And she says that all uppercase. Thank you, DD, with a heart. It's a Terra. So, hi, honey. And J-Mo Reese said something that I'm going to read out. Now, the reason I'm reading these out is because they are not on display. And Brendan's going to help us understand why. Brendan's going to explain YouTube has a system where many of these comments have trigger words, and the trigger words are taken by the artificial, I'm sorry, what do you call it? The aggregate searcher or something. What is the search engine?
Censor bot? I don't know.
And
the chat bot that like censors you when there's like certain things you say on the YouTube chat, and if it's like buzzwords, like anything to do with like white power or anything, like I don't even know, just like F words, of course, like the usual. Anything that seems sketch to them, like they'll hold the comment and then like somehow it'll get ran through like something else.
Yeah.
And if it's really sketch, they'll delete it.
Yeah. And yet I don't see any option for making these things public or displayed. Instead, what I see is the display says 2 comments on it, and it doesn't show them. It doesn't display them. Wow. They're probably visible to the people who entered the comments, but they're not visible to anyone other than me. I've hearted them both, put a thumbs up on them both. They're not. Oh,
you're saying even on the regular comments? That's interesting.
Yeah. This is the regular. Yeah. Well, these are, I guess, what this young lady, Elizabeth C, said, which she had the word bullshit or go to, and I guess that was kind of taken by YouTube as sketchy. And right. J-Mo's comment is more understandable, even though he said absolutely nothing that I consider negative or incendiary. In fact, for J-Mo Reese, this is like as mild as you can fucking get. So I'll read this out. It's just 2 paragraphs. J-Mo said, and he's listed as J-Mo72 on YouTube. he said 2 days ago, 48 hours ago, he said, can't put it past Trump to have activated assets of color to attack Jewish communities. And he's talking about the attack of those two African-American extremists on the Jewish community. That was such a long firefight. Like I said, it's historical. It's literally historical. Firefights do not even last nearly that long in any normal or conventional sense. So he follows up by saying, don't know if such has happened, but by creating a schism between Jews and non-whites, he can demonize colored folks more, possibly roping in undecided whites and Jews who once voted conservative and Republican but have ceased. In other words, he's talking about the Jexodus, or Jews who have this wonderful young lady who provided me my Whole Foods plastic. She says "Sorry Yoy" on Insta, so it's "Sorry Yoy" on Insta. She found it. Okay. She found it. God bless her. And to continue with what and thank you, honey. And continue with what JMO says. Don't know if they have said assets or do such. Oh, they do. Yes. But I could somehow see it happening. He's impeached already. He's nothing to lose by going all out. This won't bode well for anyone. Coordination between Netanyahu, Trump, and Putin in making Jewish a race associated automatically with Israel is a mass psyop, a mass psychological operation that may have the same aim. Trump can use the I'm pro-Israel card, although I think they vastly underestimate the intelligence of Jewish Americans to see through it. Only 2020's election will tell. So this was hidden from view. I don't know how to unhide this. So I'm going to ask our man, Brendan, who has the ability to get into my YouTube channel to see if he can unhide these, if there's some kind of option for that, or whether he even sees these on display.
Okay, let me see real quick.
Sure, take your time. And while you're doing that, I'll continue to address the audience with what this brings up to me, okay? And
okay, yeah. Wait, which one was it? Just not the one last or the one before last?
Oh, the fuck no. It's the one where I'm voguing with the blades. I've got the blades, the two blades in my right hand and my left. That one, yeah. Anyhow, so we're learning more about a mysterious weekend call between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The Russian government was the first to break the news about the call when it published a statement and readout saying the two leaders discussed items of mutual interest, and Putin thanked Trump for information provided by the United States that helped foil a terrorist attack in St. Petersburg. It took the White House a full 24 fucking hours until the day before yesterday to confirm this call. It may not seem like that big of a deal on its surface to the ignorant, but bear in mind the entire impeachment issue revolves around President Trump's calls with foreign leaders. 'Tis beyond an affront before all of us. Putin, however, evidently have nothing but warm feelings for Trump right now. In a holiday message, the Russian leader invited Trump to Moscow in the coming year and voiced his hope that the two empires could work on their relationship. Yes, and so the young lady...
Pretty classic.
Yes, the young lady who provides my my plastic said, "Your president is a pathological liar." Yes, yes. Oh my God, I love her. Right. This gives me the impression she actually may be a foreign national. So that's
that makes sense. But also, like, I didn't see any of these comments other than the two that were posted by Elizabeth and JMO. And I went in.
You had to go into comments to see them, right? You had to go into comments to see them, right? Did you actually see them on display? You don't see them unless you go into comments, right? As like the channel manager, right?
Oh, really? No, they should be up. I looked at the ones that said they were held for review, and there was nothing there.
Okay. So they should be up. I'm not seeing them on display unless I go into the comments section as the channel manager. But you're actually seeing them on display.
I believe so.
Good.
Let me just double check here.
Good. That's good. That's good. And
I see. You have to open it somehow or something. Yeah, I've noticed they've been censoring comments too, even on Facebook. Mm-hmm. I saw something today I've never seen before, and it said, only the top comments were chosen, right? Like something like that. But they don't allow you to see the other comments that were below it.
Right.
But it was on like an advertisement or something, so they obviously filtered that out. But like, could they do that with other stuff? Probably.
Yeah, but probably. I'm sure. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. It's weird because it's not allowing me to see them on just a normal profile. It says 2 comments, and then it says right above it, remember to keep comments respectful and follow community guidelines.
There you go. So
it's like basically they took those 2 off for an unknown reason, and like you can't see it.
Yeah. So only I can see it, and only Brendan can see it when he goes in as a channel manager, or Lena can see it.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. So
wow, that's weird.
Yeah, that's there you go. And
perhaps that's what the 2020 like switch up is. Like they're gonna start censoring more stuff like easily.
Yeah.
If I've already noticed that those 2 things, I don't know. It seems pretty.
Yeah.
Different.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate what you're saying. Well, what I'll do tonight is kind of like I'll finish up by talking about the fires in Australia and how that is relevant to us in California. But before I go in that direction, because it is New Year's Eve and I will be going out tonight, so I'll be leaving.
Well, it's New Year's Day.
You know what I mean. It's
Sorry,
New Year's Day. Yes, it's New Year's Day. I do want to remind people, because I think this is. I know I spoke of this in depth before, and I'll go into it perhaps again in the future. But just so people know, China sent a scientist to prison for his gene editing work. One of the communist Chinese scientists who shocked the world by creating the first ever gene-edited babies, or at least, the first one that China bragged about, circa 2018, but yesteryear has been, the year before yesteryear now, has been sentenced to 3 years in prison. He Jiankui, who caused a major stir yesteryear, or the year before last at this point, when he claimed to have created the first gene-edited babies, was handed a 3-year prison sentence and a 430,000 United States dollar fine. 12 other researchers also received sentences. He Jiankui, or Jiankui in the correct pronunciation of mainland China, an associate professor at the Southern University of Science and Technology in Shenzhen, was convicted of illegal medical practice for his role in employing gene editing technology, or what they call CRISPR, CRISPR, to produce a set of twin babies he announced was immune to HIV, the human immunodeficiency syndrome virus. Now, the scientific deed was met with condemnation by many in the global community, who raised critical questions about the ethics of gene editing, the issue of consent, and the impact of such an act on the future of biomedical research itself. The court that sentenced He also said that his actions went against national regulations, and that he went through with the process with the intent to profit and gain recognition. Well, of course, that's what any scientist fucking does, so I'm not quite sure how that...
Well, why would he go public, then? Do you think he thought the government would back him up, or...?
He must have been convinced that would have happened. Yes, he must have been convinced that was going to be the case. But just so people know, editing the genes of embryos intended for pregnancy is banned in many countries. Not all, but many, including these United States. So I went to the politics of why he did what he did last year, or maybe even 2 years ago, actually, to tell you the truth. Yeah, at this point. It's nevertheless, he's finally now being forced to pay the price, if you will. He's being used as an example. But interestingly enough, as I've said, there's not many surnames. There's only basically about 100 Chinese family names altogether, basically. And so there's about 100 Chinese surnames, and his surname is He, which is the same name of my Asian Pacific Islander female psychologist. Her name is Dr. He, so she's Chinese American. And so there you have that. At any rate, so that's amusing. That provides some bemusing stuff there. Now, was there anything that you had to observe about the genetics or the gene editing before I go on with anything else. You're always invited, of course, to.
I just think that like I think it's been going on for a while.
Thank
as far
you.
as like certain groups, like even in the West, of course, do it. But for him to come out in public and say it was like, I feel like someone told him like, we got you, or like, we'll back you up, and they didn't.
Yeah.
Or something happened, like, unfortunately.
Well, they backed him up enough.
Because why would someone risk their whole career just to like be famous? You know, like that. That's not logical, right?
Well, it's how do I say this? There are people who would do that, but I think what he did was he never believed this was going to happen. He must have, but nevertheless, he was backed up enough where nothing did happen for years. I mean, it took maybe about 2 years before he finally got sentenced. So, basically, I think what happened is they're scapegoating him now for political reasons. And he's
could it have just been like the international backlash that they didn't want to have like bad rep?
Well, you'd think that they would do something immediately. I mean, why wait 2 fucking years, right? I mean, obviously, it wasn't. They weren't doing anything in particular that, how would I say it? Meted out any swift judgment. So it's one of those things where it was a gray area. They were. I think that they just finally got to it now, simply because. I don't know. I'd really have to look into it. I mean, the politics in communist China is so dysfunctional. It's so Byzantine that half the time you can only speculate as to why things happen there. As Brendan says, everything, we all know this has been going on forever. And for lack of a better word, even though the term is rather gauche, everybody does it. I mean, everybody's been doing this.
And to tie it back to like the anime, like a lot of the themes, like the genetic manipulation and stuff, has been around because like the Japanese have had like underground facilities. They've done stuff. Yeah. Well, and the animes have like revealed that partially.
Here's how it's done. Just to give you some context on that, the Japanese, what they did was they operated through South Korea. The Japanese are not doing it underground in Japan. It would be like basically Americans going to Mexico for a kind of surgery that's not permitted here in the United States. So the greatest example of this was the Pak-Jong Clinic. And the Pak-Jong Clinic was established in Seoul, the capital of the Republic of South Korea. So this medical facility in Seoul, South Korea, in the late 20th century. Now think about what I'm saying here. If I said that in the majority of my lifespan, that would have sounded like I was talking about speculative science fiction. And here I am now saying in the late 20th century. Think of how that makes me feel. It makes me feel old. Okay, I mean, like, I mean, here we are in the 21st fucking century, which most of you kids were born in, who are listening to us. It's disturbing to me, to talk like this. But here we were in the late 20th century, which for all you kids out there, I may as well be saying, millions and millions of years ago, when dinosaurs walked the earth, and I was born in the Pleistocene. It's like that. Now, in terms of the Pak-Jong Clinic itself, its clients were drawn from many Pacific Rim nations, but the most enthusiastic among them were Japanese. The clinic's initial purpose was to offer a gender selection service, which guaranteed the sex of children, but it rapidly expanded to offer genetic screening services, which tested embryos for the presence of defective genes. From there, the clinic staff quickly progressed to the implementation of techniques for enhancing the development of embryonic brains, supplying their clients with machines which could administer courses in abstract geometry and topology, musical tone recognition, basic linguistic grammar, and so on. These fetuses, which responded most adeptly to intrauterine education, made astonishing progress. Their brains, uncluttered by vulgar experience, displayed astonishing capacities for calculation. Some began to develop abilities not seen in adult brains, including short-range telepathy. And the Japanese Maitai, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, which runs the Japanese economy, was quick. By the way, this is the Japanese wartime economy of the 1980s that I'm speaking of. And that was the Maitai who mobilized all Japanese industry to export like they're fighting a war. All of this was the central command of Japan Incorporated. They began to, well, they were quick to take advantage of the opportunities thus presented, welcoming the most talented fetuses into the workforce. They had kids who were productively contributing to Japan Incorporated in the womb. Unfortunately, it was quickly discovered that no matter how able the Pak Jong fetuses became, they lost virtually all their abilities after parturition because of the effects of birth trauma. The clinic's ingenious technicians became very anxious to find a way around this problem, or at least to minimize its economic consequences. But Dr. Pak's preschool, as it was colloquially referenced, ultimately faced a condemnation from the Japanese parents who felt that they had been exploited or ripped off. So the man who paid the price was this fine South Korean scientist, Wong Woo-suk. His surname was spelled S-U-K. Of course, some of these Asian names sound incredibly funny to Americans, so the correct pronunciation to avoid that kind of bullshit, like Wong Woo-suk coming up with a kind of suck my dick kind of euphemism, is to remember it as Wang Woo-suk. And, well, that still sounds kind of bad. But he resigned from South Korea's World Stem Cell Hub at Seoul National University because of this scandal. At any rate, he was scapegoated. And this is very similar, perhaps, to the Chinese communist situation. Only here we have capitalist South Korea, where Dr. Wang Woo-suk's misconduct undermined the already controversial standing of stem cell research in the United States and around the world, or was judged to have done so. Now, think again of the year that I'm speaking about. This was 2005, and it was probably around December, right around Pearl Harbor Day, 2005, that all of this finally came to full circle, where this guy, decades later, we're talking about the Pak Jong Clinic was operational, I'd say around 1989. So it took from 1989 to the year 2005. I mean, you're good at math, Brendan. Tell us how many years that was before this guy.
I'm like 16 years, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, and Wong's name was linked with several breakthroughs in stem cell research. In 2004, his team stunned the world by announcing it had cloned 30 human embryos and harvested stem cells from them. Now, no one had ever cloned so many embryos at once, watched them grow to such an advanced stage, and then used them as sources for stem cells. And in May of that year, 2004, his team announced it had created 11 new stem cell lines, almost a dozen, tailored to individual people, taking genetic material from each person and inserting it into a donated egg. Now, ultimately, because this was the same individual who so many Japanese felt they'd been ripped off by, whose children had actually been employed for a career that they were looking forward to in the top Japanese industries at the chief executive officer level of salary at birth, or rather even before birth.
Wow.
Yeah, then they lost that when the children were born, because of all the skills being lost at birth trauma. Then they got back at this doctor, and disgrace fell on him November 24th of around 2009, as I said. And 2005, excuse me, about the year after he had cloned all those stem cells and made it publicly known that he had done so. And South Korea's health ministry ascertained that 2 junior researchers in Wong's lab had donated their own eggs. Now, that was not against Korean law, but it was a terrible violation of ethical standards. It also emerged that 20 other women had been paid for their eggs. Now, Wong neither made the payments nor pressured the woman for their eggs, but when he found out, he did not immediately tell anyone. And on November 25th of 2005, he took full responsibility and resigned. Now, what I don't understand is why any of this fucking matters.
Right.
How is it that, a bunch of women get paid for their eggs, guys who are working for them, females, donate their eggs? Okay, why is this an issue?
That's a good question. I don't know.
But it's not. It's not an issue. What happened was a bunch of pissed off Japanese basically bribed the fucking Korean government and said, screw this fucker. And so they said, oh, the government came in and said, oh, you fuck now.
It's interesting because, even now they still use, what's called IBS cells, and they're, testing them out in the open, the Japanese are. And so they're obviously using what this guy found out, perhaps.
Yes. And here they were back in 2005 saying, stem cell research is under intense scrutiny all over the world. It should be. Even its strongest supporters realize human embryos deserve utmost respect, unimpeachable standards. I mean, I think that, in the end...
It's like, what? Yeah.
Fuck, how else are you going to get the stem cells?
Right. I mean, they've tried other ways, but it doesn't work. But that's a hard one. I mean, I don't know.
Well, there's nothing hard about it. Basically, you're going to get stem cells by paying women to give their eggs, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. But I mean, the ethics of it, is there really a line? Can you determine the line of ethics?
I think it's basically, this is all politics. And the reality is, do you want medical results or not?
Right.
And the only way you're going to get medical results that help humanity, that are going to give humanity a form of extended lifespan to the point where you may as well consider us immortal.
Those IPS cells rejuvenated eyesight and spinal cord injuries, stuff that we can't do right now. Yeah.
Yes. So this is what you're going to need to overcome this ethical bullshit. Because it's all bullshit. It's all fucking bullshit. What these people are doing all of this goes to the wealthy elite anyway.
Right, exactly.
So the wealthy elite are taking advantage of this while they tell all you, oh, it's ethical standards. Yeah, that's why you're going to die, while generations from now, your great-grandchildren are going to say, hey, how come Rockefeller ain't dead yet?
What?
And so this is why we are basically the next revolution, the next politics of the next revolution will be the vampire revolution, in the sense that I myself, with a vampiroid bloodline, a Dampfire, will be insistent on sharing an immortality with all humanity, that all humanity may have more time and therefore be less desperate to work through all of our social problems. And the revolution will be against those who wish to prevent you from ever having that time, who wish you to die while they live forever. So a true populist movement is one that says, let's give everybody the opportunity to live that long if they want. If you're some religious freak who misinterprets the Bible in a perverse fashion, where you say, I will never have this, that's unethical, then you can die. after living a normal lifespan. And believe me, you will not be missed.
I could see that happening, like the division of like people that live, like some Gattaca kind of stuff, where there's like the normal people, and then there's the people that choose to go through with it.
Yes.
Like, do you foresee that like happening, like being like two different kinds of humanity almost?
Yes, and I could foresee, without being Islamophobic at all, I could foresee the majority of Dawal Islam or the Islamic world denying this technology. Just saying, right. No, we will not participate in this technology, but at any rate,
that brings to mind. I was wondering if you knew about like the 1979 siege in Mecca. Like, I just learned about this today. Oh. But apparently in Saudi Arabia there was some dude that claimed he was like the Mufti or like the
Oh, the Mahdi.
The Mahdi, yeah, right. Yeah. And so he like took over like Medina for a day or something, or Mecca, the Grand Mosque in Mecca.
Yes.
And that's when like all Saudi, they used to be more liberal in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then after that incident, even like bin Salman, he was saying that after 1979, like they took away like the movie theaters and the women on TV, the newscasters, and like.
USB. It sounds like a psyop, an excuse that they did to justify their doing that. Yeah.
To reverse perhaps they orchestrated
it. You
never know, right?
it. Oh, I can guarantee you they did. Yeah.
But they had, in this article I read, they had the French anti-terrorist legion that just got created, or league, or whatever they were, like authority or some kind of French branch of the military. They came in and like gassed I'll have to send you the article. They like gassed underneath the mosque to get them out.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Well, that would just be another excuse for the Saudis to basically do what they did. So yeah, that's
right. They basically killed all of them, essentially.
Yes, incredible. And the Mahdi operation was something that I'll go into in the near future. No point in going into it tonight, but you're bringing back all these old memories.
Right, that would be pretty cool to hear from your perspective.
Okay, yeah, I'll go into that. The Mahdi was the creation, by the way, the Mahdi.
Or like, you don't have to do it right now.
No, but just to give people a little understanding here of the term. The term,
I see.
The Mahdi or the Mahdi is that's the Islamic Messiah.
Yes.
That's their version of what
the coming of Jesus, the similar kind of scenario.
Yes, right? Yes. In apocalyptic Islam. Just as in apocalyptic Judaism, they have what they call Mashiach, or Messiah, would be their version of a Jewish Messiah, and obviously non-Christian. For Christ, it would be the return of Christ for Christians. In apocalyptic Islam, the concept of the Mahdi is that the Messiah will return, the Prophet Muhammad, in a new incarnation, and so so I'll go into that. Basically, what happened was a child was raised under the conviction, indoctrinated to believe he was that Messiah. This child was raised in a very highly rarefied and isolated environment. And so that was what had happened there. And then they cut him loose and did everything they did so they could just fuck up their own people through, eternity, or until they're overthrown. And by that, we're speaking of the House of Saud, which, of course, is nothing to do with Islam and everything to do with corruption.
And from a military standpoint, like, they didn't know what to do. Like, they basically couldn't counter them, or that's what this article said. They had no experience on the field, basically, is what I got from it.
All of this is, it's how do I say this? It's one of those things that's easy enough to believe.
They had to call in the French. I mean, I don't know why else you'd do that.
But then the question would be, why the French?
I didn't get that either. It seemed odd, like something out of like a novel where it was like this anti-terrorist, like French elite unit. Like, why?
Yeah. Well, definitely. I knew elements of what had happened. When you send me the article, it'll help piece together for me the context, and then it'll help draw forth a bunch of memories and where I can look in my notes. Right. So I'll close off for tonight. Definitely hang around if you wish, and break in if you feel that you have something to say or contribute. But definitely, I want to thank.
I think I'll probably have to head out tonight, actually.
Okay, well, all my love.
If that's all right.
Yes, yeah, and I love Brendan as a son. He's made everything possible. Wouldn't be here to produce it all without him, and I'm glad he was able to give me kind of a break tonight to help burn bandwidth and be on record for a couple of hours before I could take off. So I'll do that for tonight by closing out the show. Brendan will leave first, and then I'll close off. So all our love,
much
Brendan.
love, Douglas. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And
hugs.
Yeah, blessings of higher and divine.
Thank you so much.
May divine bless you. All right.
Take care. Happy
Good
New
night,
Year.
everybody.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
So the world rings in 2020. People wanted to cancel the famed New Year's Eve celebration in Australia. Sydney hosted one of the globe's first celebrations. In other words, because they're they're west of the ID line, the international date line. They're one of the first major nations to celebrate or ring in the new year on planet Earth. Though, of course, the sun rises in the east, and since they're in the Australasian region of the world, Sydney hosted one of the globe's first celebrations with a controversial fireworks display. Most Australians wanted it cancelled as the country battles deadly wild bushfires. Since September, more than 100 bushfires have destroyed almost 10 million acres in 5 states of Australia. Fires have caused massive evacuations in Australia. Tens of thousands of people were told to leave the state of Victoria. Indeed, but 48 hours are gone. Tens of thousands of residents in the southeastern Australian state of Victoria were being warned that it may already have been too late to evacuate in anticipation of massive wildfires then heading for the region. Instead, fire officials were telling people in the popular tourist area of East Gippsland to seek shelter immediately and stay inside. Dry weather and thunderstorms were expected in area over the last few days, which meant no respite from the blaze. Meanwhile, more than 250,000 people had by then signed a petition asking that officials cancel Sydney's famed New Year's Eve fireworks display and redistribute the funds toward firefighting efforts. Sydney's Lord Mayor Clover Moore thus responded that, while she appreciated citizens' support and concern, the event's budget had already largely been spent. Prime Minister Scott Morrison said Sunday, "The display would go on because 'twas important to send a message to the world." And I don't know what the fuck that message would be, other than Aussies party till the lights go out. And so about 4,000 people were trapped on a beach in southeast Australia earlier yesterday as wildfires swept across the region. Started by errant fireworks. Sparking off into the bush. Residents and tourists in Mallacoota in the state of Victoria gathered on the shore under a soot-blackened sky as part of a previously agreed-upon evacuation plan. I mean, like, in case the fireworks spark off, that's all me here, and so it goes. Conditions on the beach got so bad, some people fled to the sea on their boats. As the day wore on, a change in weather patterns gave evacuees some reprieve, and some people were able to return to their homes. However, the situation in the town is still dangerous. Elsewhere in the region, officials are worried for isolated neighborhoods where supplies and evacuation opportunities be scarce. Weather conditions were supposed to improve over the last 24 hours, but may worsen again by Friday, meaning no end in sight for the scourge of wildfires that have plagued Australia for weeks. Australia experienced its hottest day ever as dated the 17th day in mid-Menses, or mid-month of December, which did nothing to quench the wildfires still raging then cross-country. The average maximum temperature was 105.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and the heat got even worse that week as the heat wave continued to spread east into Victoria and New South Wales states. Meanwhile, 100 active fires were still burning even then, and 54 were not yet contained. The ongoing heat exacerbated these blazes. Residents were being told to stay indoors, and the greater Sydney area was already under water restrictions. On Thursday is dated the 14th day in mid-menses of November, or mid-month, the month before last. A 16-year-old was questioned by police in connection with a bushfire in the Australian state of Queensland. Almost 60 bushfires were still ripping their way through parts of the country in the month before yestermenses, the month before last, 30 of which still had not been yet contained at that point in time. Though local police asserted most had been caused naturally, quote-unquote, they reiterated that starting fires of any kind was contemporarily prohibited under a total ban affecting 12 states. The bushfires had claimed 4 lives by then, destroyed hundreds of homes, and caused millions of dollars in damage. Firefighters had proven able to contain the worst of the blazes, but the total cost in terms of property and wildlife still yet remains to be seen. California can learn from Australia's experience with devastating wildfires. As California casts about for new approaches to its wildfire crisis, officials could do worse than look to Australia, firefighting's acknowledged superstar. Well, till as of late. That fire-prone country has turned disaster into a laboratory. While not perfect, obviously, Australia has studied fire extensively and crafted policies intended to reduce fatalities and make its homes safer. The country also explicitly shares fire chores with homeowners, who be expected to help or get out of the way. The two locales, California and Australia, have some key things in common. A similar climate, many of the same plants and trees strewn across oft-arid landscapes, and residents bedeviled by wildfires that are worsening as climate change resets seasonal norms. A large swath of Australia has been plagued by brutal heat and withering drought. Wildfires there, as here, rage for much of the year in 80% of the country. And remember, Australia is the only country in the world that occupies an entire continent, whereas California is a state that could function quite well as an independent nation, with an economy larger than that of the British Empire, the 5th largest in the fucking world, and the engine that drives the entire American empire's economy. Take away California, and the United States is just another third world shithole. California leads in at least another way, with the depth of its toolbox, the machines and equipment it employs during fires, unmatched even by Australian technology. Australia can't come close to the squadron of helicopters, large tankers, and other aircraft that California dedicates to firefighting. Not even the entire United States National Forest Service has anything like it. Other differences? Nearly 60% of California's forests are managed by the United States government. Therefore, the fires California has not been able to handle was because of government intransigence under the administration of Donald Trump that wouldn't let our firefighters on federal territory. Australia has neither vast government land ownership that would prevent their fighting fires like our hostile Republican government, nor even a federal fire service. And Australia's owner's saving his property approach may not work well in areas of California dotted with seldom visited vacation homes. But California might find lessons in several key Australian policies, particularly the principle of shared responsibility that underpins them. Focus on self-reliance. Australia's view is that government and citizens should work together to keep people safe and homes and property protected. The country has an extensive network of volunteer fire brigades, and not just in rural areas. The service that covers Sydney is staffed by 70,000 volunteers, making it the world's largest volunteer fire agency. These cadres work alongside paid professionals in a cooperative culture and with an intimate understanding of fire. The system fosters self-reliance and, critically, provides the tools for homeowners to protect themselves and their property when expecting firefighters' help is not realistic. Advice to the public pulls no punches. A government statement about fires that have been raging near Sydney recently has a brutal honesty that the United States agencies would find unthinkable. TAIPEI, "There are simply not enough fire trucks for every house. If you call for help, you may not get it." Australian officials were confident that trained amateurs could withstand what normal fires could throw at them, until a horrific series of blazes on a single day in 2009 that left 173 Australians dead. The event, known as Black Saturday, shook the nation and its fire professionals, who realized that wildly unpredictable blazes had redefined the norm that year. Justin Leonard, Australia's leading wildfire researcher at the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation, the National Research Institution, observes that in the chaos, people panicked despite their training. To quote as he, "Even very well-prepared people died in that fire. The wind blew doors open, broke windows. You could hardly stand up outside. Conditioning people to the reality of what they are going to see is the absolute key to preparing them." After Black Saturday, officials tweaked perhaps the best-known feature of Australia's approach to wildfire, a shelter-in-place option, which teaches residents to either learn to protect themselves and their homes from fire or leave well before the threat becomes acute. Australians are drilled to pay attention during extreme fire weather, and like Californians, to heed evacuation calls. But officials also train residents extensively to fireproof their homes and educate them about what to expect and what to do if they choose to stay as flames advance. Each of Australia's 8 states operates independent fire services, which conduct training at a community level. Across the country, well-presented information is available online and in television and radio announcements. For volunteers, training is constant, and they turn themselves over to help prepare neighbors. Such training falls to local authorities in California and stops well short of preparing homeowners to fight fires. Scott McLean, spokesman for the state firefighting agency CAL FIRE, attests that state officials be aware of Australia's policy, but we haven't discussed it in any depth. He said California firefighters may direct homeowners to shelter in place when evacuating is too dangerous. As an alternative, in last year's Camp Fire, which destroyed the town of Paradise, crews established refuge areas in parking lots and other large open spaces. The preparation fostered by Australia's training can help curtail panic, reduce deaths, and contain property damage. But the stay and defend choice has become riskier as the nation's fires have become more frequent and more dangerous, just as they have in California. After Black Saturday, the Aussies devised a new catastrophic threat level, which has been applied to parts of the country in the recent fires. When in place, it means homes cannot be safely defended, and all homeowners are warned to leave endangered areas. Fire officials in California may already be taking a page from Down Under, shifting to a shared responsibility message. They be increasingly talking about residents in fire-prone areas as partners. Homeowners need to take a greater role in helping themselves. They are beginning to finally say. Fire officials are even starting to echo their Australian counterparts, admitting that California's wildfire problem is so acute that the people in the red trucks aren't going to be able to save everyone. Per the aforecited spokesman for the state firefighting agency, CAL FIRE, Mr. Scott McLean, to quote as he, "It's about responsibility. Property owners need to understand they be responsible for defensible space, and the public needs to heed advice and evacuate." And it's also all about burying power lines, as recent bitter experience in California has evidenced. The responsibility for many of Australia's most dangerous fires can be laid at the feet of power companies. Nearly 80% of wildfire deaths in Australia since 1950 have been in blazes started by power lines, according to Simon Dunstall, a scientist studying utility-caused fires at the National Research Institution. 2 decades ago, Australian states required new high-voltage power lines to be buried underground. When the country was considering that mandate, a report to Parliament put the cost at 5 to 13 times more than that for overhead lines, as much as 50 billion United States dollars in that 1997 reckoning. In California, where authorities have ordered power providers to make their equipment less fire-prone, the bill for burying power lines today is far higher, with utilities estimating more than 2 million United States dollars every single fucking mile. In Australia, state governments have paid a portion when privately owned power companies upgrade their equipment or put wires underground. In the state of South Australia, for example, local government absorbs a third of the cost. And, of course, we'd best start using research to craft policy. California is brimming with world-class research institutions that have been comprehensively studying wildfires for decades. CAL FIRE and other agencies, as well as the United States Forest Service in California, have platoons of fire scientists cranking out reports suggesting actions that could keep people, property, and landscape safe. But fire legislation is famously fraught with disagreement and argued over by parties with deep economic interests, and compromise, the engine of lawmaking, does not always create consequential policy. Experts agree the key to Australia's success in addressing wildfires be its ability to respond after a disaster, learn from it quickly, and amend even long-standing policies. Fire research is well integrated into education and preparedness efforts. The nation has been studying fire statistics and fire models for more than 60 years, and fire policy is based on that research. When an issue of surpassing public importance occurs, officials convene a royal commission to investigate. The Black Saturday fires led to a commission report that examined the cause of wildfires of a scale and ferocity that tested human endurance. That pivotal event brought changes in fire policy the very next year. California has no such commission, although authorities here be examining decisions, including errors made during the fires that killed about 100 people, circa 2018, now the year before yesteryear, hoping to improve warnings and evacuations. Let me tell you a bit about what they found in learning from tragedy. The 2009 Black Saturday fires in Australia took 173 lives in one single day. Researchers studied how people perished. 44% were fleeing. Some were in cars, some on foot, some in t-shirts or bathing suits in the searing heat. 30% were unaware of fire. They expected to be warned or thought the fire not serious. Some were tourists unfamiliar with the region. 58% had no preparations. They did not leave early or defend their homes. Many awaited warnings that could not contact emergency agencies, or they couldn't themselves contact such. 69% passively sheltered in place. They did not employ or did not follow safety plans. Many were in bathrooms without outdoor access. 30% tried to defend their property. They died looking for people or animals, or had inadequate tools or pumps, and electricity failed. 44% were deemed vulnerable. They were younger than 12 and older than 70, or had acute or chronic illness or disability. Now, my source for all these facts and figures is the Victorian Bushfires Royal Commission from their Fatality Review Report. And it pains me. The best laid plans can fail. Even with attention in both hemispheres, trained on making homes and communities safer, good work can easily be undone. Dave Winacker, chief of the Moraga-Orinda Fire District in the San Francisco Bay Area, said he's seen people conscientiously clear trees and brush from around their homes, only to line sidewalks and driveways with wooden fences. To quote his T, I tell them that a wooden fence lined around your sidewalk or your driveway is like a wick leading to your home. Your home is the candle, and you're going to burn. Now, in Australia, one city council in the Sydney suburbs required homeowners to maintain wooden fences to achieve a specific aesthetic look. This is what Leonard told me. His research group demonstrated the fire risk that posed and made their findings public. The council and others with similar policies immediately dropped the requirement. Now, my very existence, as all of you know, is a struggle. I find it interesting, and we'll discuss this when I have some episode in which a roundtable can be conducted with our friend Justin White. Shout out to he. Of course, the young lady, Crystal River, with her insights. Peter Moon, of course, who is now officially my biographer. And in Brendan Zogid, it goes without saying. Daniel Arola, hopefully, if he can participate. And, of course, there were insights from he and his affiliates I'll bring up in a later transmission as well. Those are who come to mind immediately. There may be a few others. But honestly, I'm under total silence suppression that has been 100% effective and successful. Think about the fact that many people don't even know, based on my images, the photographs that I electronically attach to my videos. Most people are attracted to the image and thumbnail. They have no idea that it's not physiologically female. They think that I'm actually a female or showing an image thereof. They don't realize it's myself in drag. The same with my promotional banners on Facebook. Most of the time, females automatically get high hits, orders of magnitude, above any male posts or videos, no matter what the venue is. That doesn't work in my case at all. The fact that I am the son of Adolf Hitler should be enough, whether people accept that fact or not, to attract enormous attention. It brings none. The fact is that I am successfully suppressed by the information machine, which is dominated by the Office of War Information, created in World War II, now on black budget and off the books. No one dares to speak my name. The end result is that I'm counting on you. It doesn't matter what I've done or what I can do. You're the only person who can make it worthwhile, who can make it happen, who can, in the end, help yourselves by helping me. Because there's no one else who has the capacity, based on experience, to help the human race through what otherwise will be its end times. Contribute to the struggle at showsdd.com/donate.html, which itself be acronymous for Hypertext Markup Language, where we now be accepting contributions via PayPal Holdings Incorporated on showsdd.com. We close this transmission with all due acknowledgement unto mine own personal hero, our dearest English brother in battle, who be Team Dietrich, or Dragon's ultimate post-episodic producer, and our final productions archivist at showsdd.com, as well as the YouTube Maggot channel, which you can subscribe to at youtube.com/c/Maggotaur. Maggotaur being spelled Maggotaur. That's the property manager thereof is John Henry II McMills Warrington, who you can friend and follow via his Facebook timeline at facebook.com/john.war. For were it no for he, nigh all videographic works of the Renegade military historian would have been lost. 'Twas he who saved nigh all the Douglas Dietrich videos published on platform provided by YouTube that would otherwise have been erased. From all free public accessibility and monopolized for privatized monetization via Patreon by the openly sub-satanic welfare-supported white trash Pueblo, Colorado-based amateur sorceress and skunk whisperer Amber Rose Dio, whose My Stick Warrior channel actively exploited YouTube to promote Edomite Thelema or Will of Peter Simon Levinda, author of the Simon Necronomicon, to children for years prior her exposure, and via his own so-called Dietrichology YouTube channel by the parentally aided and abetted violent alcoholic Eurotrash Canadian multiple sexual assaults offender Pavel Edward Prevara, who resides in his federally pensioned parents' Toronto domicile and aliases himself as Paul Edward via his Facebook timeline, whereon he hides still behind images of myself to friend underage boys, precepts predation. You can find evidence thereof on the homepage at showsdd.com, where you'll get direct linkage there too. So, an alert Naktung, a warning to all fans, friends, and followers of myself, to Bolo, be on the lookout per pedo predator Pavel Edward Paul Edward Prevara. You can find all the backstory on the September 8th, 2019 dated episode of Critical Omissions entitled Deep Web Pedo Predator Hides Behind the Face of DDD. This public figure, the former executive producer of my program, who was caught red-handed attempting to archive my entire Google account after having hacked it via VR co-managed Douglas Dietrich YouTube channel, be a cyber terrorist with a known criminal record of multiple sexual assaults, confirmed to still be preying upon young boys behind my known image, even whilst brazenly self-promoting his self-employment expertise as simply JAP, J-A-P in the uppercase. Paul Prevara, referencing himself as a data engineer for then producing my program, makes little sense beyond hyperbole, and the citing of JAP as his employer, or rather his field of employment, as he be presenting himself as self-employed, thereby indirectly but publicly self-asserting his unemployability, makes no sense at all beyond the intended entendre as ethnic slur against myself, JAP, or JAP, otherwise being acronyms for a software, Java non-proxy. You can find out more about it, appropriately enough, at the source called Fresh Meat, linked at freshmeat.sourceforge.net/projects/anon, as in anonymous, the maintenance of anonymity, similar to Tor, the function thereof, TOR, also in the uppercase, the onion router, as in multi-layered, which itself be likewise exploitable in hiding and encrypting IP or Internet Protocol addresses by moving through multiple routers, a dark web tool employed throughout the pedopornographic industry, precepts pederast predations, JAP being similar thereunto, but JAP itself being relatively new, released circa December of 2016, as well as concurrently deployable to hide web browsing. Paul Prevara thereby openly promoting himself as a data engineer in the realm of child exploitation and baby rape, advertising unto others his own ability to deep dive into the depths of deepest darkness and assist others in such. His About section in linked reads, "My objectives remain the same, resolve data problems through abstraction," which all too obviously makes no sense whatsoever, a silly string of terms comprising non-sequitorial word salad. A data engineer develops, constructs, tests, and maintains architectures such as databases and large-scale processing systems, which altogether might be occulted, obfuscated as abstracting data problems, but it's not how anyone seriously seeking employment would advertise themselves. Instead, Polyboy the pedo presumest any potential contractor to read as, and to interpret his pithy about statement as, "I exploit JAP to resolve data problems," it as transmission of questionable data through abstraction, meaning the cascading and mixing the data streams of multiple users in order to further obfuscate, it as to cull the data outsiders, which be what JAP does. Both Polyboy the pervert and his handler, Agnieszka or Agnes Maria Schrockzinska, promote themselves as hackers. It would be self-evidently stupid to advertise oneself as such via LinkedIn by all common sensibilities, but they have been emboldened by the Temple of Set to hide in plain sight. Pauly's entire linked entry being utterly senseless by any conventional rationale other than within this context. Ergo, therefore, Paul Pedo Prevara be advertising more than meets the eye. Anybody conducting a search on LinkedIn for JAP, specifically, in disambiguation from the ethnic slur spelled with a capital J and a lowercase ap, which would pull up anyone's profile who worked in either a Japanese restaurant or the Empire of Greater Japan itself, will instead, using all uppercase letters, come across Pavel's page, and most likely not anymore, with the nebulous statement of resolve data problems through abstraction, it est via encryption, being the key. Anyone who wants help in questionable tasks requiring Jap now be directed to his page alone. His critical omission of blatant hypocrisy, what speaks volumes in of and for itself, being that he refuses to explain in his openly published public statement per myself as to why he still misrepresents himself by hiding behind the photograph of a liar, which you can see on facebook.com/PI342 instead of his own flaccid face for reasons that be all too obvious. No one would friend him by his own wretched appearance, despite the fact that he tells underage minors that they have finally found Waldo, the Where's Waldo franchise, and that Waldo was really Harry Potter, his other preferred self-misrepresentation, all along before offering to let them play with his magical wand. And one final warning by way of Pavel, the pedo-predatory pervert from Prague. He has now established a false Twitter account by which to misrepresent himself called, in the all uppercase letters of course, @DDD_now. The official Twitter account for myself be @DougDDietrich, with only the D's in the uppercase. Both the identified malefactors, Rose Dio and Paulie Privy, ultimately boasted themselves activated assets of the Temple of Set founder, the Setheistic id-as satanic high priest and primary Wikipedia contributor, the United States National Security Agency Deputy Director, Dr. Michelangelo Mikey Aquino, Colonel, United States Army, Special Forces, Psychological Operations, retired, but laterally transferred into National Security from the United States Army, wherein he had become a liability by my expositions. And, of course, his ever-swelling cult of the Kings of Edom, id-as the anti-gods. But now you too can do your part to help in the fight against total annihilation. Spread the word about Douglas Dietrich, that he, the biological son of Adolphus Jacob Hitler, which you can find out more about on douglasdietrich.com/2019/05/08/ Douglas Dietrich, son of Adolf Hitler, fighting against white supremacist neo-Nazis, as linked by douglasdietrich.com, and confer a footnote on my bio, sire, on the homepage of showsdd.com to find out the meaning of my father's name, that I be alive and well in the city and county of San Francisco, and if at all possible, electronically relay the contributions at showsdd.com/donate.html. People are forever asking Douglas Dietrich what they can do to fight the pedopathophilocracy, such being our present Slavo-Western government by patriarchy of pathological pedophiles. You can all help spread awareness by supporting myself. We have a new contribution page on douglasdietrich.com where you can make his donation online using either the credit or debit card. Simply go to douglasdietrich.com and click the red donate button. All sponsors will be granted exclusive electronic access to both my videographic and audio recorded archives through to this year, from the 2011th year in our Lord, the very year mine own late and sainted matriarch, the Grandma Dame Diana Linzu-Chin, Takabayashi Hideko Dietrich, was murdered, assassinated, nigh immediately aftermath, the Sanjuichi Sensemi, the 3/11 terror attack against the Fukushima Daiichi, or Big One cluster of nuclear power plant facilities on site, the 7,000 islands of the Greater Japanese Empire, when 'twas deemed by the reckoning of Native American cosmology that the first rays of the dawning of the sixth world broke upon us, and magics could again be worked conjointly with Mother Earth to redeem the folk upon her. They're not on YouTube anymore, whereon the internationally recognized renegade military historian and Intraglobal Crises analyst Douglas Duane Dietrich long ago established his high-profile visibility platform per rationale of personal security. So visit showsdd.com/donate.html and donate online, where it is fast, easy, and secure. Only on contribution will their membership be processed within 48 through 72 hours, between 2 to 3 days, for full access to all mine archives, meaning all those videos that John Warrington saved, aside those on the Maggot Douglas Dietrich channel, and the YouTube channel named Taboo Bros 2, spelled TABOO space BROS space Roman numeral 2, as managed by mixed martial arts maestro Daniel Arola, whom you can visit at facebook.com/Daniel.Arola.3, Odamage, or Daniel Arola Martial Arts Group Incorporated, Kali Combatives. Yea, so all the Magator-backed Doug Dietrich hosted vids now be available unto all, excepting contents accessible via the aforementioned TB2 and Maggot YouTube channels, Our extensive showsdd.com archives, now including even the old ostensibly professed Revolution Radio archives obtained from the late and unlamented controlled oppositionist Mike Ringley, thanks to private purchase by the well-established alternative acid rock band Deep Space Pilots, whom you can visit at deepspacepilots.bandcamp.com. Lead bandsman Ronald P. Stroine, who you can friend on Facebook as Zeb Shepard. He being general practice attorney at law in good standing at the law offices of Ronald P. Stroine and Associates, serving the Chicagoland area's legal needs since 1980 in federal appellate practice, divorce and family law, real estate, bankruptcy, criminal, and DUI. Visit thedebtfreeway.com, as well as the Soi Disant American Freedom Radio transmissions I myself hosted from May 20th of 2018 that Pavel Edward Provara smuggled onto YouTube, Precepts ultimately copywriting them for himself, as alluded to within Entitlement, a same-dated episode, Douglas Dietrich on American Freedom Radio about being introduced to American Freedom Radio. Such episodes being re-recordings with new images taken from correspondent points in mine presently banned Facebook timelines, but reformatted per the date our Grand Magator John Warrington named each file, and along other John Warrington uploaded programs, inclusive videos, are now only to be found on douglasdietrich.com once upon you click that red donate button. On past transmissions, I've informed our listeners about the option to sendist checks or monetary orders to my own physical mailing address in order to avoid paying the middle person. Now my manager, Lena Shea, has asked myself to clarify unto our audience that I was referring to PayPal Holdings Merchant Services as said middle person and not herself, who be an unremunerated volunteeress. As my webmistress, the young Madam Lena Shea has been relaying thank you communique on mine own behalf unto everyone who submits their donations online. My presently transitional website situation be in no way, shape, or form analogous to the Aquino-designated suppression asset Lorian Ann Fenton, signed to sabotage my contacts per potential sponsors and all my communications via the open public while stealing any and all incoming fiscal succor intended for myself as her personal profits. So fear Goddess and dread not. Whether you send donations online or through the postal services, it will reach myself. Accepting donations online cost us roughly 3% plus or minus to process, so ye can help us save a few extra dollars by mailing either checks or money orders, never cash, to the personal residential address of the Mr. Douglas Dietrich, which itself be listed on douglasdietrich.com. The most important thing being that people regularly donate what they can within their means. Foremost among Access Daddy D's donors, aside his lady and mistress Lena herself, be our most beloved greater British brother in battle, the Team Dietrich Dragon, He-Man heavyweight lifter, and expert mixologist, a keeper of the spirits and bartender, and YouTube Bizarre HD channel manager, whom you can subscribe to via his channel at youtube.com/user/Bizarre HD, itself spelled BIZAREHD, the manager being George Knight. You can friend him at facebook.com/George.E.Knight.7, our own personal hero who has substantially delivered towards my salvation from the streets and whose self-produced videos entitled How the United States Won World War I and Why We Are Still Legally at War with the Third Reich both be factually substantiated per mine own expositions. Indeed, the last, the Trakulvies, or the son of Dietrich's, or son of a dragon's, expositions via YouTube would not be possible, sans generous benefactions from my listeners on a monthly basis. He being the only person, this son of the dragon, Anglo-corrupted, of course, as Dracula. Myself being the only person on the surface of this world with the insider knowledge and experience necessary to lead thy resistance against the Russo-sub-satanic occupation and anti-godly insurgency. It bearing no end of emphasis that the Judi, or Anglo-corrupted Jedi, literally Master D, the Master of Enlightenment, himself is not paid to articulate his expositions and has never once been remunerated for his services rendered unto yourself and all thy holdest dear, at incomparable sacrifices to himself, most tragically all of his loved ones, in his most singular and quite unenviable role as the ultimate public informant at personal risk. Still at large, your taxation cannot support him as he be denied access to United States Department of Veterans Affairs benefits and or services due dishonorable discharge. So again, go to douglasdietrich.com and click donate. The very survival of the human species be at stake, and we are not exaggerating. Do not wait. Donate now. It'd be appreciated beyond my ability to express in any language. Subscribe to the Douglas Dietrich YouTube channel at youtube.com/C/Douglas Dietrich and click that notification bell in order to receive notifications that live streams has started. Our gratitude unto thee all who grace Douglas Duane Dietrich's support. Most blessed be thyself in all thine own. So right now I'll take a short look into the live chat room just to see how everyone's going. Derek Talley is saying, hello, everyone. Hugs unto my dear brother from another mother, my fellow Marine, the wonderful Derek Talley, real Marine. And, of course, getting a little message now from our man, Brendan. Let me check the message box on that and see what we've got going here. So he's saying 2020 is the year of the rat, according to the Chinese zodiac. This is the year of the metal rat, starting from of course, the lunar calendar. And then he says golden rat via the color. Thank you for that. And we'll speak about that in the next transmission, perhaps. Anyhow, so there we are. John Sautry says, speak about the divine wind, the kamikaze sometime. So let's see what else is going on here. Oh, Underfell. Sarah Shields says Douglas and Brendan are smoking. I don't know whether she's talking about her sex appeal or the conversation that we've had. Hey, it was really happening in the chat room tonight. And let's see now. Bizarre HD says, interesting historical fact for anyone in the chat room to verify or research. The Wilhelm Gustloff was the largest civilian fatality massacre at sea on maritime war during Operation Hannibal. Yes, thank you, good sir. I can go into that more in depth at some point. He said over 9,400 dead at sea during relocation of the Third Reich. Very important event to research. Douglas educated me on this. Thank you. And then he says the USS Liberty incident was very real. It was a deliberate attack on a U.S. ship on international waters. Entirely deliberate, yes. The attack lasted nearly an hour. Over 30 dead was confirmed. Yeah, I'm actually surprised it's that little. I remembered it as many more, but I was probably including the injured. Still, it's a miracle anyone survived. The ship itself sank. Karen O'Connor says, hey, man, what's going on with Netanyahu's corruption charges? We're Irish, Douglas says, historically we be with and still are with the Palestinians. Acceptable apartheid in the fucking mad. Yes, understood. I've gone into that in some depth and will, of course, revisit that in the future. Karen O'Connor and J-Mo says, happy 2020 all. Yes, love from Dublin, Ireland. Elizabeth says, great show. I'm glad. I thought it was, I thought our man Brendan and I were kind of scattered, but hey, okay. And yes, J-Mo says, you're just behind a computer all day in the Air Force. Yes. And he says, this is why the Department of Education came about. He was talking about the Kennedy Revolution. Yes. And so, Karen says, can you tell us anything about Yahweh? Saw the old gods as a threat to his dominance, such as the gods of our Irish gods and the Teutonic gods too. Yes, I'll go into that in the near future. Of course, that's the church at work. And J-Mo says APEP and SEP are separate. Yes, Set actually helped slay Apophisi in earlier mythology before Set became evil to the Egyptians. Thank you. Apep or Apophis is destruction, unlike Set, who had a temple earlier on. No one worshipped Apep. Thank you for that clarification. And there we are. Bizarre HD says, I've got you on Instagram, Douglas. Any questions, just ask about Instagram. Okay. Thank you. And okay, so got some interesting stuff entered by some other people. There we are. So let me see all that. Let me see, John. Okay. Anyhow, Double X said talk about Bitcoin. I've spoken of that in the past. Christopher Rimmel says you're heard loud and clear over here in Germany. God bless you, my dear brother in Die Vaterland. And John Sautry says, where to learn about the divine kamikaze wind? Well, speak of it. Best place to go is my videos, right? They must be up on YouTube. They've been pirated enough. Roswell and the Rising Sun. And, of course, I spracketh of it again in other videos as well. It should be up there. And other places you'll learn about it, but I spracketh of it in context more than anyone. Anyhow, 36 now watching. Time for me to go. Going to have a little private dinner and gathering with those I love. And And may you all have contact with those you love throughout the new year. God bless you all. And we'll meet each other in Christ deeper into the new year by a few days on Sunday, where I'll go more into depth about how to survive 2020 as a news year, okay? Because that's going to be hard, because this is going to be a news year like no fucking other. And you're going to need a little bit of training to make it through alive, just as you would to survive a fucking wildfire. My love goes with you to all those who support me. Damnation be upon those who try to assail or regale myself. And for the rest of you, stay safe. And our friend Christoph Rimmel says, had to check 8 in with Secrets of Saturn as well. Love overlap, some monies to reach you once they arrive here. Well, thank you, dear Christoph. Hugs, brother. And King Raw 85 says, good night, brother. Good night unto you. All my heart to all the boys and girls out there.